Cole Mercer had buried enough dreams in Nevada dust to know when something was wrong. The smoke rising from his cabin wasn't from his fire. He hadn't lit one in 3 months. His hand found the revolver at his hip as he approached, boots crunching on sun-baked earth. Inside, a woman stood with his kitchen knife, dark eyes burning with something fiercer than fear. She didn't apologize, didn't explain. Just 3 words that changed everything. I need marriage. Not love, not shelter. Marriage. The kind of desperation that came with blood on your heels and nowhere left to run. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Now let's dive into a story of survival, strangers, and the fierce bonds forged in fire. The cabin looked smaller than Cole remembered, like the desert had been swallowing it piece by piece while he'd been gone. 3 months of breaking his back in played-out mines, chasing rumors of silver that never materialized, sleeping on rocks that felt softer than his prospects. He'd come back with empty pockets, a persistent cough from breathing too much dust, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that made a man question why he bothered coming back at all. Except the cabin was supposed to be empty. Dead. Just like everything else he'd left behind. The smoke changed that calculation real quick. Cole reined in his horse about 50 yards out, his jaw tightening as he studied the thin gray ribbon rising from the chimney. Could be drifters. Could be worse. Out here, worse covered a lot of territory. Claim jumpers, deserters, men running from things that made them meaner than rattlesnakes. His hand moved to the Navy Colt at his hip, thumb checking the hammer out of habit more than thought. The desert stretched out in every direction, beautiful in the way that dangerous things often were. Scrub brush clinging to life in sandy soil, distant mountains wavering in heat shimmer, sky so blue it hurt to look at directly. Empty country, honest country. The kind of place where a man could disappear if he wanted to, which was exactly why Cole had chosen it 5 years back. He dismounted slow, ground-tying the horse with a quiet word. The animal was trail-worn and thirsty, but well-trained enough not to bolt. Cole moved forward on foot, keeping low, using the scattered Joshua trees and rocks for cover. Closer now, he could see other signs of habitation. His woodpile depleted, a bucket by the well that he'd left inside. Someone had been here a while, long enough to get comfortable. The door stood slightly ajar. Cole's grip tightened on the revolver. He'd left that door barred from the outside, a simple precaution that clearly hadn't been enough. Through the gap, he could hear movement, the scrape of something metal on metal, footsteps that seemed too light to be a man's. He used his boot to push the door wider, gun raised. The woman stood by his stove, a kitchen knife in her hand and absolutely no fear in her eyes. That was the first thing that struck him. Not that there was a woman in his cabin, not that she'd clearly been living there uninvited, but that she looked at him like she'd been expecting company and he was late. She was Chinese, small-framed but not fragile, wearing a simple dark dress that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back severe and practical. Dust and sun had darkened her skin, but there were lighter patches on her wrists, recently exposed, he realized. Wherever she'd come from, she hadn't been working outdoors long. "You Cole Mercer?" Her English carried an accent but was clear, direct. He didn't lower the gun. "That's my name on the deed. You got about 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't drag you out of here." She didn't flinch, just set the knife down on the counter with a deliberate click, keeping her hands visible. "I need you to marry me." Of all the things Cole had expected, pleading, excuses, maybe an attempt to run, that wasn't on the list. He actually laughed, a short bark of sound without humor. "Lady, I don't know what kind of game you're running." "No game," she cut him off, voice flat. "I need a husband. Legal husband. You need—" She gestured around the cabin. "I cleaned, fixed the roof where it leaked, kept the well clear. You have food now, supplies. Fair trade." Cole's finger stayed near the trigger, but his mind was working. The cabin did look better than when he'd left. The floor was swept, his scattered belongings organized. Through the window, he could see his small vegetable patch, which he'd abandoned to die, was not only alive, but thriving. "How long you been here?" 5 weeks. No hesitation. "I came from San Francisco. Men followed me. They'll follow again." Her hand moved to her collar, pulling it aside to reveal bruising that made Cole's stomach tighten. The marks were fading to yellow-green, but the finger-shaped patterns were unmistakable. I need a name that protects me, legally. There's law in Carson City. Sheriff there. Law? She laughed, and it was brittle as old glass. Law says I'm property. Contract says I belong to the house that paid for my passage. Law would send me back. Her eyes locked with his, and there was steel there. I won't go back. Cole finally lowered the gun, though he didn't holster it. His head was pounding, exhaustion mixing with confusion and something else, a flicker of recognition. He knew about running, knew about the kind of desperate that made you do things that looked crazy from the outside. What's your name? Lian Zhou? Miss Zhou? Just Lian. She moved to the table where she'd apparently been preparing food before he arrived. Potatoes, some kind of dried meat. You want me to leave? I leave. But you should know, men are coming, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. They'll ask about a Chinese woman. If you say I was here, they'll know where I went. If you say nothing, she shrugged. Your choice. Cole's mind churned. This was insane. You didn't marry a stranger because she asked. You didn't tie your life to someone you'd known for less than 5 minutes. He should throw her out, should ride into town right now and what? Tell the sheriff there was a woman running from what sounded like an indenture contract? From men who thought they owned her? Out here, that kind of contract held water. The law wasn't built to protect women like her. It was built to protect property rights. And if she'd signed something in San Francisco, or someone had signed for her, she was in a corner with no good exits. They hurt you? He nodded toward the bruises. Yes. No elaboration. Her face could have been carved from stone. How many? 4 that I saw, more in San Francisco. She resumed cutting potatoes with mechanical precision. The one who leads them is called Garrett. He worked for the house, brought girls from China. I was supposed to... She paused, knife stilling. Doesn't matter now. I ran. They don't like when property runs. Property. The word sat in the room like something rotten. Cole moved to the window, looking out at the empty land that had been his refuge for 5 years. After Sarah died, after he'd buried her and the life they'd planned to build, he'd come here to be alone, to not have to explain or feel or care about anything except survival. He'd been doing fine. Well, not fine, but managing, breathing, existing. This woman was asking him to care again, to put himself between her and danger, to take on responsibility for another human being. Every instinct screamed to refuse. I can't pay you, Lian said, still focused on the potatoes. I have nothing, but I work hard. I know cooking, gardening, sewing. I can shoot, not well, but I learn fast. You marry me. I keep this cabin better than you ever did. I don't ask for love or anything else. Just the name, the legal protection. Marriage doesn't protect anyone from men with guns. No, but it complicates things, makes them think twice. She finally looked up. Right now I'm stolen property. They take me back, nothing happens to them. But if I'm a wife, American wife, they have to be more careful, maybe careful enough to give up, find easier target. Cole's throat was dry. He moved to the water bucket, dipped a cup, drank while he thought. The water was cool, fresh. She'd been maintaining the well. Small thing, practical. You said men are coming. When? I don't know exactly. I've been careful, covered my trail. But this area, she gestured vaguely north. Virginia City, Silver Peak, there's Chinese workers. They'll search there first, ask questions. Someone will remember seeing me. Week, maybe 2. They'll check outlying places. And when they show up here? You tell them I'm your wife. Show them papers. We get papers from town. Proper legal papers. They see that. They have to think different. I'm not just runaway anymore. I'm married woman. They have to consider if taking me is worth the trouble. Cole set down the cup harder than he meant to. And if they decide it is worth the trouble? Leon met his eyes steady. Then we fight. The simplicity of it was almost funny. Then we fight. Like it was just another chore to be done, no different than fixing a roof or hauling water. You ever killed anyone? No? She went back to cutting. You? Yes. The word came out flat. He didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. They stood in silence for a while, the only sound the knife against wood and the occasional creak of the cabin settling. Outside, his horse snorted, impatient for water and rest. The sun was climbing toward noon, heat building. Cole's mind went to places he'd kept locked for 5 years. Sarah had been delicate, gentle, the kind of woman who cried over baby birds and read poetry by lamplight. She'd made him better, or at least made him want to be. When the fever took her, something in him had just stopped. He'd buried her in the town cemetery, sold their house, and ridden until he found land empty enough to match the hollowness inside. This woman, Leanne, wasn't anything like Sarah. There was no softness here, no poetry, just hard edges and harder choices. "Why me?" he asked finally. "You've been here 5 weeks. Could have moved on, tried somewhere else." "I did try somewhere else, 3 places before this." She scooped the cut potatoes into a pot. "First place, the man wanted things I wouldn't give. Second place, woman there called me a whore, said she'd report me for trespassing. Third place was abandoned, no good for protection." She looked around the cabin. "This place, small, isolated, but maintained. I watched you leave, saw you were alone, saw how you moved. Careful, alert. Military maybe, or lawman, someone who knows how to handle trouble. I'm neither. But you've seen trouble, survived it." She started adding water to the pot. "And you're alone. Man alone is easier to negotiate with. No wife to object, no family to complicate." Cole almost smiled at the cold calculation of it. She'd chosen him like you'd choose a horse, checking the teeth, assessing the gait, deciding if the trade was worth making. "What happens after?" he asked. "Say we do this crazy thing. Say we get married and these men come, and by some miracle they actually leave you alone. Then what? You planning to stay married to a stranger forever?" Leanne turned to face him fully. "We stay married until it's not necessary. Year, maybe 2. Long enough that it looks real, that they stop looking. Then we divorce if you want. Or we stay married and live separate. I don't care." Her voice softened just a fraction. "I don't want to trap you. I want to survive. Help me survive. I'll make it worth your while. But I won't pretend this is romance. This is business." Business. A marriage of convenience in its purest form. No love, no promises beyond the practical. Part of Cole wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Part of him, the part that had been alone for 5 years, recognized the brutal honesty of it. He walked to the door, looked out at the desert that had been his only companion. The silence had been good, safe, but it had also been empty in ways he'd stopped admitting to himself. "If I say no? I leave today. Go north, keep running. Maybe I make it, maybe I don't." She said it without drama, just stating facts. Not your problem either way. That was the thing, though. She'd made it his problem the moment she'd settled into his cabin, fixed his roof, tended his garden. She'd woven herself into his space just enough that walking away would mean actively choosing to abandon her. And whatever else Cole had become in 5 years of isolation, he hadn't become that. He turned back. "Show me your wrists." She hesitated, then pushed up her sleeves. The bruises there were worse than the ones on her neck. Deep purple-black, the kind that came from restraints or brutal grip. Someone had held her down, held her hard enough to mark the bone. Cole's jaw worked. "How'd you get away?" "Knife." She pulled her sleeves down. "Not the one in the kitchen, different knife, smaller. I waited until only one man watched, hit him with wash basin, cut him when he fell, took his money, his jacket, ran. Matter of fact, like reciting a recipe. Don't know if I killed him, don't care." The admission should have shocked him. Instead, Cole found himself nodding. There was something cleanly honest about her lack of remorse. She'd done what was necessary. No guilt, no false horror, just survival. "The men coming, they'll be armed." "Yes." "They'll probably outnumber us." "Yes." "And you think a piece of paper saying we're married will stop them?" "No." She met his eyes. "I think it'll slow them, make them uncertain, give us advantage." She paused. "I think together we have better chance than alone." Cole rubbed his face, feeling days of trail dust and exhaustion catching up. This was madness, complete madness. You didn't marry a woman you'd just met. You didn't volunteer to stand between her and men who saw her as property. You didn't upturn 5 years of careful solitude for a stranger. But the alternative was throwing her out, sending her back into the desert to run until she ran out of places to hide. And then those men would find her, and the bruises on her wrists would be the least of what happened. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, soft and sad. "You're a good man, Cole. Don't forget that, even when being good is hard. Damn it." "We'd need to go to town," he said slowly, not quite believing the words coming out. "Get proper papers. Marriage license, certificate, the real legal documents." Something flickered in Leon's eyes. Hope maybe, or just relief. "Yes. And we'd need to make it look real. Not just papers, but witnesses. People who'd remember us, vouch for the marriage if asked." "I understand. If those men come, we fight together. I'm not dying for this, but I'm not handing you over either. We stand or fall as partners, agreed?" "Agreed." She extended her hand like they were sealing a business contract. Cole looked at that hand, small, work-roughened, marked with fading scars and fresh calluses. The hand of someone who'd fought hard to get here, to survive. He took it. Her grip was firm, no trembling. "All right," he said, feeling like he was stepping off a cliff. "We'll do this, but we do it smart. We go to town tomorrow, get married proper. Then we come back here and prepare. If they come, we'll be ready. Thank you." 2 simple words, but the weight behind them was enormous. Cole released her hand, suddenly awkward. "You can have the bed. I'll take the floor tonight." "No, I've been using the floor. I don't take the bed." His tone left no room for argument. "If we're doing this, we do it right, starting now." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The afternoon passed in strange domesticity. Leon finished cooking while Cole tended his horse and unloaded his meager supplies. The food she made was simple but good. Potatoes boiled with herbs he didn't recognize. The dried meat rehydrated into something almost tender. They ate in near silence, the weight of what they'd agreed to settling between them. After the meal, Cole showed her his weapons. The Navy Colt, an old Spencer rifle, a shotgun that had belonged to his father. She handled each one carefully, admitting what she didn't know, paying close attention when he explained loading and sighting. "You'll need to practice," he said, watching her aim the unloaded rifle at an imaginary target. "Having a gun doesn't mean much if you can't hit what you're shooting at. Tomorrow? After town?" "Tomorrow. We'll set up targets, burn through some ammunition. Better to waste bullets on practice than freeze up when it matters." As evening fell, they sat on the porch, if you could call the narrow covered space a porch, and watched the desert turn purple, then black. The stars came out thick and bright, no city lights to dull them. "Why here?" Leanne asked quietly. "This place. Why so far from everything?" Cole was quiet for a long time. "I had a wife before. Sarah. She died of fever about 5 years back. After that, I didn't want to be around people. Didn't want their sympathy or their advice or their attempts to fix me. I wanted silence." "You loved her?" It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Yeah, I did." "I never loved anyone," Leon said. "Not like that. My family sold me when I was 14, said it was opportunity, chance for better life in America. They lied, or maybe they didn't know. Doesn't matter." She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "I learned not to trust promises, not to hope for rescue, just to survive." "That why you're so calm about all this?" "I'm not calm. I'm terrified." She said it without emotion, a simple statement of fact. But being terrified doesn't help. Doing something that helps. They sat in comfortable silence after that. 2 people who'd learned the hard way that life didn't owe you fairness or happy endings. 2 people who'd survived by not expecting anything from anyone. Tomorrow, they'd ride to town and tie their lives together with legal words and witnessed signatures. Tomorrow, they'd start preparing for a fight that might never come, or might come sooner than they could prepare for. Tonight, they were just 2 strangers sharing space under a vast sky, neither one quite believing what they'd agreed to. Cole stood eventually, stretching muscles sore from days in the saddle. "Sun's up early. We should sleep." Leon nodded, rising. At the door, she paused. "Cole?" "Yeah?" "If this goes bad, if they come and we don't, if we can't—" She struggled for words, something he hadn't seen her do before. "I want you to know I'm grateful. Even if it doesn't work. Even if—" It'll work, he cut her off, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. Get some sleep. She disappeared inside. Cole remained on the porch, listening to the night sounds. Distant coyotes, wind through scrub brush, his horse moving in the small corral. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. He thought about Sarah, wondered what she'd think of this. Probably call him a fool. Probably be right, but he also thought she might understand. Sarah had believed in helping people, even when it was inconvenient, especially then. When he finally went inside, Leanne was already in the bed, turned toward the wall, breathing even. Cole settled onto the floor with a blanket, using his saddle as a pillow. Not comfortable, but he'd slept worse. Just before sleep took him, he heard her voice, barely a whisper. Thank you. He didn't answer, just closed his eyes and let exhaustion pull him under. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, for a few hours, there was just silence and stars and the strange peace of a decision made. Morning came with roosters crowing in the distance, someone's ranch, miles away, but sound carried in the desert. Cole woke to the smell of coffee, which meant Leanne was already up. He rolled to his feet, joints protesting, and found her at the stove. How do you have coffee? He asked. I was out when I left. Traded for it. Took some of your spare rope to a ranch north of here, traded for supplies. She poured him a cup. I noted everything I took. I can list it if you want. No need. The coffee was strong and hot. He drank it gratefully. You ready for town? Yes. She was wearing the same dress as yesterday, but she'd cleaned it best she could. Her hair was neat, her face washed. She looked nervous but determined. They rode out an hour later, Cole on his horse, Leanne on the mule he kept for hauling supplies. The animal was stubborn but steady, and she handled it with surprising competence. The ride to Carson City took most of the morning. As they got closer, they passed more signs of civilization. Other ranches, farms, a mining operation that looked half abandoned. People stared at them. A white man and a Chinese woman traveling together was unusual enough to draw attention. Let them stare, Cole muttered when he noticed Leanne shrinking under the gazes. We're about to give them something real to talk about. The town itself was bigger than Cole remembered, grown fat on silver money and railroad connections. They tied their animals outside the courthouse, a 2-story brick building that looked almost too fancy for Nevada. Inside, the clerk was a thin man with wire spectacles who looked up from his paperwork with mild interest that sharpened when he saw Leanne. Help you folks? Need a marriage license, Cole said, keeping his voice level. The clerk's eyebrows rose. That's so. He pulled out a form, dipped his pen. Names? They provided the information. Full names, ages, places of birth. The clerk wrote it all down with mechanical precision, though his eyes kept flicking to Leanne with unconcealed curiosity. That'll be $2 for the license. You need someone to perform the ceremony. Judge Winters is available. He'll do it for another $5. Cole pulled out the money, most of what he had left from his last job. The clerk counted it, made change, then called for the judge. Judge Winters was a heavy-set man with kind eyes and a voice that carried authority without being harsh. He looked at the paperwork, looked at Cole and Leanne, and frowned slightly. This a genuine marriage? Not some scheme? It's genuine, Cole said. The judge studied Leanne. Miss Joe, do you enter this marriage freely? No one's forcing you? No one forces me, she said clearly. I choose this. All right then. The judge gathered 2 clerks to serve as witnesses. Let's keep this simple and legal. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. Cole and Leanne stood facing each other while the judge read from a worn book. The words washed over Cole: honor, cherish, sickness, and health. Death do you part. Standard promises that felt enormous in the small courthouse office. Do you, Cole Mercer, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Leanne Joe, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband? I do. By the power vested in me by the territory of Nevada, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may... The judge paused, seeming to sense this wasn't that kind of marriage. You may sign the certificate. They signed? The witnesses signed? The judge stamped everything with official-looking seals and handed them the marriage certificate. Congratulations, he said, though his tone suggested he had doubts about what they'd just done. The license is valid as of today, recorded in the territorial books. Anyone questions it, you send them to me. Outside, the sun was bright and hot. Cole folded the certificate carefully, tucked it into his jacket. Leon stood beside him, looking at the busy street with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Well," he said, "that's done." "Yes." She looked at him, something shifting in her face. "I'm your wife now, legally. And I'm your husband." The words felt strange in his mouth. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, two strangers who'd just bound their lives together with legal words and official stamps. "We should get supplies before heading back," Cole said finally. "Ammunition especially. And I want to stop by the telegraph office, see if there's been any word about men asking questions." They spent the next hour gathering what they needed: bullets, food that would keep, medical supplies. At the telegraph office, Cole spoke quietly with the operator, an old man who knew everyone's business. "Chinese men asking around?" The operator scratched his chin. "Haven't heard anything specific, but there's been some strangers in town past few days, rough-looking types. One fellow was asking about Chinese workers, places they might go. Claimed he was looking for a servant who'd run off." Cole's stomach tightened. "What'd you tell him?" "Nothing. Told him I didn't keep track of other people's help." The operator glanced toward where Leon waited outside. "That your wife?" "As of an hour ago, yes." "Huh." The old man studied him. "You need help, Cole. You let folks know. We might be rough out here, but we don't hold with people being treated like property." "Appreciate that." They rode back in the afternoon heat, neither speaking much. The town fell away behind them, civilization giving way to emptiness. When the cabin came into view, Cole felt something settle in his chest. Home. For whatever that meant now. As they dismounted, Leon looked at him seriously. "Now we prepare?" "Now we prepare." They spent the rest of the day turning the cabin into something that could be defended. Cole showed Leon how to board the windows. Not fully, but enough to provide cover while still allowing shooting positions. They moved supplies to strategic positions, filled extra water containers, made sure every weapon was loaded and accessible. As the sun set, they stood in the cabin, surveying their work. It looked like what it was, a place ready for a siege. "You think they'll come tonight?" Leon asked. "Maybe. Maybe not for days. Maybe never." Cole checked the loads in his revolver for the third time. "But we'll be ready either way." They ate a quick meal, neither with much appetite. As darkness fell completely, they sat in the cabin's main room, a single lantern burning low. Every sound outside seemed amplified: wind, animals, the settling of the structure. "Tell me about the men," Cole said. "Everything you remember. How they move, how they think, what they want." Leon told him. She described Garrett, the leader, tall, scarred, with a voice like gravel and eyes that showed nothing. She described the others she'd seen. The young one who was cruel because he thought it made him hard. The quiet one who was dangerous because he enjoyed the work. The one who seemed reluctant but followed orders anyway. "Garrett won't give up easy," she finished. "He has reputation to protect. If he lets me go, others might run. He needs to make example." "Then we make an example of him instead," Cole said grimly. They settled in for a long night. Cole took the first watch, sitting by the window with his rifle, listening to the darkness. Leon tried to sleep, but he could hear her moving restlessly on the bed. Around midnight, she gave up and joined him by the window. "Can't sleep?" "No." She sat beside him, hugging her knees. "Keep thinking they're out there, watching. If they are, they're doing it quietly." He scanned the visible landscape. More likely they're still gathering information, planning their approach. "You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," he said, echoing her words from yesterday. "But being terrified doesn't help." She smiled faintly at that. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who barely knew each other, waiting for violence that might or might not come. "Cole," she said softly, "if this works, if we survive this, what then? Then we figure out what comes next. Together, I guess. That's what partners do." "Partners," she repeated, like she was testing the word. "I like that better than husband and wife." "Yeah," he agreed. "Me too." The night stretched on. No attack came. As dawn began to break, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold, Cole let himself relax slightly. One day down, however many more to come. Leon stood, stretching. I'll make coffee. We should practice shooting today, like you said. Good idea. She paused at the stove, looking back at him. In the early light, she looked young and old at the same time, someone who'd seen too much but refused to break. Thank you, she said again, for not sending me away. Thank you for fixing my roof, he replied. It wasn't poetry, wasn't romance, but it was honest, and somehow that made it more real than any pretty words could have been. They were partners now, bound by law and necessity and the simple human need to not be alone in the face of darkness. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. That would have to be enough. The coffee was bitter that morning, but Cole drank it anyway. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, and every muscle in his body complained about the night spent hunched by the window. Lion moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, her movements already falling into a rhythm with his own. It was strange how quickly the space had adjusted to two people instead of one. We'll set up targets behind the cabin, Cole said, draining the last of his cup. Away from the road where the sound won't carry as far. Will people hear? Probably, but folks shoot around here all the time, hunting, practice, scaring off coyotes. No one will think much of it. He stood, joints cracking. The trick is making sure you can actually hit something when it matters. They spent the next hour hauling old wooden crates and setting up makeshift targets at various distances. Cole marked them with charcoal, rough circles that would have to do. The sun climbed higher, heat building despite the early hour. Start with the revolver, he said, handing her the smaller of his two pistols. Rifle's more forgiving for distance, but if they get close, this is what you'll need. Leanne took it carefully, weighing it in her hand. It's heavier than I expected. Everything about this is heavier than expected. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance. Feet apart, shoulders loose. You tense up, you'll pull the shot. His hands on her shoulders felt awkward, too intimate for people who'd known each other 3 days. He stepped back quickly. Try the closest target. She aimed, squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide, kicking up dust 2 feet left of the crate. Again. She fired 5 more times. 2 shots hit the general area of the target. 1 actually struck wood. Not bad for first try, Cole said, reloading the cylinder. But we need to get that number higher. When men are shooting back, you don't get second chances. They practiced for 2 hours, the sun beating down relentless. Leanne's hands started to shake from the repetition, but she didn't complain. Cole watched her jaw set with determination each time she missed, saw the small flash of satisfaction when she connected. You're pulling left, he said after the 10th round, anticipating the recoil. Let the gun surprise you. How do I let a gun surprise me? I know it's going to fire. Yeah, but your body doesn't need to know exactly when, and smooth pressure, steady breath, the shot happens when it happens. She tried again. This time, the bullet punched through the center of the charcoal circle. There, Cole said. That's the feel you want to remember. By noon, they'd burned through 100 rounds between the pistol and rifle. Leanne's shooting wasn't good, but it was competent. More importantly, she didn't freeze or panic. The noise and recoil didn't send her scrambling. That was worth more than accuracy. Enough for today, Cole said, gathering the weapons. Your hands are probably raw. She looked down at her palms, red and blistered. I've had worse. The simple statement carried weight he didn't press. They walked back to the cabin in silence, the desert shimmering around them. In the distance, heat devils danced on the horizon, making the mountains waver like something from a dream. Inside, Cole started cleaning the weapons while Leanne prepared food. The domestic normalcy of it felt surreal, like they were playing house while waiting for a storm. How long were you married before? Leanne asked suddenly. To Sarah. Cole's hand stilled on the rifle. 4 years. Would have been more if she'd lived. You don't talk about her much. Not much to say. She was good. Better than me. When she died, I stopped seeing the point in most things. Leanne was quiet for a moment, stirring something on the stove. My mother used to say that living is the point, that every day you wake up is another chance to do something that matters. I thought she was foolish. She paused. Now I think maybe she was brave. What happened to her? Fever, like your wife. My father sold me 6 months later to pay debts. No bitterness in her voice, just facts. I was angry for a long time, thought he should have found another way. But there wasn't another way. Not for people like us. Cole set down the rifle, looking at her. You ever think about going back to China? No. Immediate. Certain. Nothing there for me now. This is home, I guess. America. Even if America doesn't always want me here. America doesn't know what it wants, Cole said, too busy arguing with itself to figure it out. She smiled faintly at that. You sound like you don't like it much either. I like the land, the space. It's the people that complicate things. Present company included? He considered. Jury's still out. That made her laugh, a real laugh that transformed her face. Cole found himself almost smiling in response. The afternoon passed in preparation of a different kind. Cole showed her how to bar the door properly, where to position furniture for cover, how to move through the cabin without silhouetting herself against windows. She absorbed it all with focused intensity, asking questions when something wasn't clear. If they come at night, he said, they'll expect us to panic, to make mistakes. Our advantage is knowing this space, every board that creaks, every line of sight where the shadows fall. You've done this before, defended a place. Different war, different reasons. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't push. Point is, defense is about patience. Let them make the first mistake. As evening fell, they ate another quiet meal. The waiting was starting to wear, that particular tension that came from expecting violence without knowing when or if it would arrive. Tell me something, Leanne said, breaking the silence. Something that isn't about fighting or running or any of this. Cole frowned, caught off guard. Like what? I don't know. Something you liked before everything went dark. A memory that doesn't hurt. He thought for a long time, sifting through years of deliberately not remembering. Sarah used to sing while she cooked. Couldn't carry a tune worth a damn, but she did it anyway. Made up words when she forgot the real ones. The memory came with less pain than he expected. Drove me crazy sometimes, how cheerful she could be. But I miss it now. The noise of someone being happy. Leanne was quiet, absorbing that. My mother told stories, old Chinese tales about spirits and heroes and people being rewarded for kindness. I stopped believing them after she died, after I saw how the world really worked. She stirred her food. But sometimes I try to remember them, the endings where good things happened. You remember any? One about a girl who saved a snake from a flood. Later, the snake turned out to be a dragon's daughter. She granted the girl a wish for her kindness. What did the girl wish for? To never be hungry again. Leanne smiled sadly. In the story, the dragon makes sure the girl always has food. In real life, people just stay hungry. Depressing story. I know. My mother always said I focused on the wrong parts. She looked at him. What would you wish for? If you had one wish? Cole thought about it. To stop being tired, not just body tired, the other kind. The kind that makes everything feel like too much effort. You think you'll ever get there, not tired anymore? I don't know. Maybe that's not how it works. Maybe you just carry it and learn to move anyway. Like carrying water uphill. Yeah, like that. They finished eating as darkness settled fully. Cole lit a single lamp, keeping it low. Too much light made the windows into mirrors that showed nothing outside. They needed to see out, not in. Around 10, Cole heard it. The distant sound of horses. Multiple horses, moving slow and deliberate. Get the rifle, he said quietly. Stay away from the windows. Leanne moved fast, her earlier practice paying off. She positioned herself behind the heavy table they'd turned on its side, rifle ready, exactly as he'd shown her. Cole crouched by the window, peering through a gap in the boards. In the moonlight, he could make out shapes, 4 riders approaching cautious. They stopped about 100 yards out, just beyond easy rifle range. They're smart, he muttered, not rushing in blind. Can you see them? Barely. They're staying in shadow. He watched the riders. After a moment, one of them dismounted, approaching on foot with hands visible and empty. Someone's coming up, Cole called. Hands clear. Wants to talk, maybe. It's a trick. Probably, but we listen anyway. Learn what we can. The figure got closer, a tall man, confident stride despite approaching an armed position. He stopped about 30 feet from the cabin, close enough to speak without shouting. "Cole Mercer?" The voice was rough, authoritative. "I'm guessing you're inside. I'm guessing you know why I'm here." Cole didn't answer immediately. Let the man stand there, show his nerves. "Name's Garrett," the man continued. "I'm looking for a woman, Chinese, small, probably gave you some story about being in trouble. I'm here to collect property that was stolen from my employer." "Property," Cole said, loud enough to carry. Interesting word for a person. "She signed a contract, legal contract, for passage and employment. She broke that contract when she ran. I'm just here to enforce it." "That's so? You always enforce contracts by leaving bruises?" Garrett's silhouette shifted. "I don't know what she told you, but she told me she's my wife," Cole cut him off. "Got the papers from Carson City to prove it. Dated, stamped, legal as they come. So whatever contract you're talking about, it's not my problem." Silence. Long enough that Cole knew his words had landed. Marriage complicated things in ways a simple theft didn't. "That was fast work," Garrett said finally. "Awful convenient. Her finding a husband right when we show up." "Convenience has nothing to do with it. She's married. That means she's under my protection. And my name. You want to challenge that, take it up with the judge who married us. Papers can be forged. So can contracts." Cole shifted his rifle slightly, letting moonlight catch the barrel. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back on your horse, ride back to wherever you came from, and forget you were ever here. Because the woman you're looking for doesn't exist anymore. She's Mrs. Mercer now, and I don't take kindly to people threatening my wife." "Your wife," Garrett repeated, tone skeptical. "You don't even know her." "I know enough. I know she's not going anywhere with you." Another long silence. Cole could feel the tension building, the moment balanced on a knife's edge between words and violence. "I've got 3 men with me," Garrett said. 4 guns against whatever you've got in there. Those aren't good odds." "Maybe not, but you're the one standing out in the open while I'm behind cover. So the first bullet that flies, you're the one taking it. Ask yourself if enforcing this contract is worth dying over." "It's not about worth. It's about principle. About making sure people know they can't just run. Then you've got a choice to make. Stand on principle and get buried for it, or walk away and find someone else to make an example of." Cole could see Garrett weighing it, could almost hear the calculations running through the man's head. The other riders hadn't moved, staying back in the darkness, waiting to see how this played out. "You're making a mistake," Garrett said finally. "Protecting her. Wouldn't be the first one. Won't be the last. She's not what you think. Not some innocent victim. She killed a man in San Francisco, did she tell you that?" "She mentioned it, said he had it coming. She cut him so deep he bled out before anyone found him. That's murder in any territory." Cole felt Leon tense behind him but kept his voice steady. "Sounds like self-defense to me. Woman fights off a man trying to hurt her. That's not murder. That's survival." "The law might see it different." "Then bring the law. Bring the sheriff from Carson City. Let's have a proper conversation about contracts and self-defense and who exactly was doing what to who." Cole leaned forward slightly. "But I'm guessing you don't want law involved any more than she does. Because legal scrutiny goes both ways, doesn't it? Might start asking questions about how young Chinese girls end up in contracts they can't read." That hit something. Garrett's posture changed, tension replacing confidence. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet." Garrett stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his horse. The 4 riders regrouped, voices carrying but words unclear. Then they turned and rode back the way they came, not fast but not slow either, maintaining dignity and retreat. Cole stayed at the window, watching until the sound of hooves faded completely. Even then, he waited another 10 minutes before moving. "They'll be back," Leon said quietly. "Yeah, but not tonight. Tonight they're regrouping, figuring out their next move." He turned to face her. "You killed him? The man in San Francisco?" She met his eyes steady. "Yes. He was going to sell me to someone worse. I heard him talking, making arrangements, so I waited until he was alone and I made sure he couldn't follow. You tell me that before, I still would have married you." "Would you?" She sounded genuinely uncertain. Yeah, man tries to sell a person like livestock. He's forfeiting the right to be upset when that person fights back. Cole set down his rifle. But I need you to be straight with me about everything. No more surprises. If there's anything else, warrants, other men, bounties, I need to know. There's nothing else. Just Garrett and whoever he's working with. And the house in San Francisco, but they won't come this far. Too expensive, too much trouble. All right. He believed her, or wanted to. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. We've got a decision to make. We can wait for them to come back, fight here on ground we know, or we can take the offensive, track them back to wherever they're camping. Tracking them is dangerous. They'll expect it. Waiting is dangerous too. Gives them time to plan, maybe bring more men. He rubbed his face, exhaustion making everything harder to think through. What do you think? It's your life they're after. Leon was quiet, considering. I think we wait. Let them make the mistake. You said patience is our advantage. That was hours ago, and you were right then. Hours ago, they hadn't actually showed up. Now that they have, everything's different. Is it? They're still out there. We're still in here. We know this space. We're prepared. Why give that up to meet them somewhere we don't control? Cole thought about it. She wasn't wrong. Leaving the cabin meant abandoning their advantages, cover, supplies, defensive positions they'd set up. It meant gambling that they could find Garrett's camp and handle 4 armed men on open ground. All right, he said finally. We wait, but we don't relax. They'll probe again, test us, see if they can catch us off guard. Maybe try burning us out, cutting the well, something to force us into the open. What do we do if they try that? Depends what they try. Fire. We fight it or run, depending how bad it gets. Well, we've got reserves inside. They can't starve us out in less than a week, and I don't think they have that kind of patience. They settled back into watch positions, but the dynamic had shifted. The threat was real now, immediate. No more wondering if Garrett would actually come. He'd come, he'd staked his claim, and he'd be back. Cole? Leon's voice was small in the darkness. I'm sorry for bringing this to you. You didn't bring it. I chose to stand in the way. Still, you could have said no. Should have, probably. Yeah, well, I'm not always smart about these things. He glanced at her. You holding up okay? I'm scared, but I can function scared. I've had practice. That's all anyone can ask. The night stretched long and tense. Around 2 a.m, they heard riders again, circling the cabin at a distance, making their presence known without committing to anything. Cole tracked them through sound alone, gun ready, but they never came closer than rifle range. Psychological, he muttered. Keeping us on edge, making sure we can't sleep. Is it working? Little bit? He smiled grimly. But 2 can play that game. When the riders circled near the eastern approach, Cole fired a single shot in their general direction. Not trying to hit anyone, just reminding them that shooting worked both ways. The horses scattered, men cursing. They pulled back farther, regrouped, but didn't circle again. See? They want us nervous, but they don't want a real fight yet either. Why not? 4 against 2. Because they don't know what we're capable of. They don't know what weapons we have, how good we shoot if we've got help coming. Uncertainty makes people cautious. Are we capable of much? Honestly? Cole considered. We can make it expensive enough that they decide it's not worth it. That's all we need to do. Dawn came slowly, painting the desert in shades of gray, then gold. The riders were gone, but Cole could see their tracks circling the property. Clear message. We were here, we're watching, this isn't finished. Over breakfast, neither of them with much appetite, they discussed next steps. We should go back to town, Leon suggested. Tell the sheriff what happened. Make it official. Sheriff's not going to do much. Garrett's smart enough not to break laws he can't talk his way around. And like he said, you've got that killing back in San Francisco. Sheriff starts digging, that might come up. So we just wait? Hope they give up? Not hope. Plan. Cole spread out a piece of paper, started sketching the cabin and surrounding area. They'll come again. Probably tonight or tomorrow. When they do, we need to control how it happens. He showed her ideas. Places to create bottlenecks, areas where cover disappeared, angles where crossfire could catch attackers exposed. She added her own thoughts, Surprisingly tactical for someone who'd never done this before. You're thinking like a soldier, Cole said, impressed. I'm thinking like prey that's tired of running. She pointed to a spot on his sketch. What about here? If we move those crates, anyone approaching from the north has no cover for 30 feet. Good eye. We'll do that this afternoon. They spent the day fortifying, improving their positions, making the cabin as defensible as they could manage. Every board added, every gap closed, felt like buying time against the inevitable. Late afternoon, a rider approached alone. Not Garrett this time, but one of the others. Younger, less confident. He stopped well back, hands visible. Got a message from Garrett, he called. He's willing to negotiate. Negotiate what? Cole responded from the window. Money. He knows she's got value to you now, wife and all. He's willing to settle the debt for $500. Cash. She goes free, no more trouble. $500. Cole laughed without humor. And if I don't have $500? Then we'll take payment another way. Your land, maybe. Deed to this property. He really thinks I'm going to hand over my home? I think he's giving you an out, a way to end this without more blood. The young man shifted in his saddle. Look, mister, I don't care about any of this. I'm just doing a job, but Garrett's serious. He's not going away. You can pay him off or you can fight, but fighting's going to end bad for everyone. Tell Garrett if he wants to negotiate, he can come himself. I don't do business through messengers. He won't come. Doesn't trust you won't shoot him. Smart man. Cole paused. Tell him this. The answer's no. She's not for sale at any price. And if he comes back, he better come ready for war because that's what he'll get. The young rider looked genuinely troubled. You're making a mistake. Everyone keeps saying that. Hasn't changed my mind yet. The rider left. Cole watched him go, then turned to find Lien staring at him. $500, she said. That's a lot of money. It is. More than this place is worth, probably. Maybe. You could have negotiated. Talked him down. Maybe. I wasn't negotiating. Cole's voice was firm. You're not property. Not to them, not to me. I'm not putting a price on you like you're a horse or a piece of land. But no buts. We settled this when we got married. You're my wife. Partners. That means I don't sell you out when things get uncomfortable. Lien's eyes shone with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them back. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. He checked his weapons again, a nervous habit forming. Either way, we're past the point of backing down. Garrett knows we won't negotiate, so tonight or tomorrow he stops talking and starts acting. We should rest while we can. Take shifts sleeping. You sleep first. I'll watch. Cole, you're running on fumes. I can see it. Sleep for a few hours. I'll wake you if anything happens. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She curled up on the bed, fully clothed, rifle within reach, and was asleep in minutes. Cole watched her breathe, this strange woman who'd upended his carefully constructed isolation. 3 days ago, she'd been an intruder. Now she was his wife, his partner, someone he was willing to fight for. The speed of it should have terrified him. Instead, it felt almost natural, like he'd been waiting for a reason to care about something again, and she'd simply provided it. Outside, the desert was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that came before storms. Cole settled in at the window, rifle across his knees, and prepared for whatever darkness would bring. The attack came at dusk, that strange hour when shadows stretched long and the light played tricks on tired eyes. Cole had just woken Lien for her watch shift when he heard the first horse, not circling this time, but coming straight in from the west where the sun sat fat and red on the horizon. They're using the glare, he said, moving to the window. Smart. We'll be half blind looking that direction. Lien grabbed the rifle, hands steadier than they'd been yesterday. How many? Can't tell yet. At least 2. He squinted against the dying light. Stay low. Don't shoot unless you've got a clear target. The riders came fast, splitting as they approached, 2 breaking north, 2 south. Classic pincer movement, trying to attack from multiple angles at once. Cole tracked the northern pair while Lien covered the south. Then the first torch arced through the air. It hit the roof, rolled, caught on the dry wood. Flames spread quick, fed by months of desert sun baking the timber. A second torch followed, then a third. Within 30 seconds, the cabin's roof was burning. Damn it, Cole hissed. They'd talked about fire, prepared for it, but the reality was different from the theory. Heat built fast overhead, smoke starting to seep through gaps in the ceiling. We have to go outside, Leanne said, coughing. That's what they want, get us in the open. But she wasn't wrong. Stay inside and they'd cook or suffocate. Go outside and they'd be exposed to 4 men with guns. Another torch crashed through the window, glass shattering. It landed near their water barrels, flames licking at the floor. Grab what you can carry, Cole ordered. We go out the back, move to the rocks behind the well. It's cover and we can see all approaches. They moved fast, no time for discussion. Cole took the rifle and as much ammunition as his pockets would hold. Leanne grabbed the shotgun and the bag of supplies they'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Medical kit, water, food that wouldn't spoil. The back door opened to chaos. Smoke billowed out, and in the confusion, they ran. Gunfire erupted immediately, bullets whipping past, one close enough that Cole felt the air displacement against his cheek. He returned fire blind, just trying to make the shooters duck. They reached the rocks as the cabin's roof collapsed with a sound like breaking bones. Flames shot up into the darkening sky, bright enough to hurt. Cole pressed against stone still warm from the day's heat, breathing hard, trying to assess. You hit? He called to Leanne. No. You? No. He peered around the rock. In the firelight, he could see shapes moving, the riders repositioning, using the burning cabin as a backdrop that turned everything else into silhouette. Clever bastards, a voice cut through the crackling flames. Garrett, confident now. You made this harder than it needed to be, Mercer. All you had to do was take the money. Cole didn't answer, conserving ammunition and information. Let Garrett wonder where exactly they were positioned. She's not worth dying over, Garrett continued. She's just a girl who killed a man and ran. Nothing special, nothing that should matter to you. She matters to me, Cole shouted back before he could stop himself. The words came from somewhere deeper than strategy. Why? You've known her, what, 3 days? 4? That's not enough time to care about someone. That's not enough time to die for them. Cole glanced at Leanne. In the flickering light, her face was set hard, but her eyes showed something else. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. Time doesn't measure worth, he called. You should have learned that before you started treating people like livestock. Gunfire answered him, bullets sparking off rock. Cole ducked, counted the shots. 2 revolvers, maybe 3. They were being cautious with ammunition too, which meant they hadn't brought endless supplies. We can't stay here, Leanne whispered. Once the fire dies down, they'll see us clear. She was right. The rocks provided cover now, but the cabin's flames wouldn't last forever. Already the initial fury was settling into a steadier burn. Another 20 minutes and they'd lose the chaos that was currently keeping Garrett's men uncertain. There's a ravine about 100 yards east, Cole said. If we can reach it, we can move along it to higher ground. Get above them instead of pinned down here. 100 yards of open ground. Yeah. He checked his ammunition. 16 rounds for the rifle, 6 in his revolver. Not great. We'd need covering fire. One of us runs while the other shoots, then switch. I'll run first, Leanne said immediately. Like hell. I'm faster and I know the terrain. You're a better shot. You give cover, I run. Then I cover you. Cole wanted to argue but couldn't fault the logic. He was better with the rifle, and if something went wrong, he had a better chance of fighting his way out than she did. All right. But you run fast and you don't stop. Not if I'm shooting, not if you hear me yell, nothing. You get to that ravine and you stay down until I get there. What if you don't get there? Then you keep going. Follow the ravine north to the ridge, then head for Carson City. Tell the sheriff everything. Make them listen. Cole, promise me. She met his eyes, jaw tight. I promise. But you're going to make it. Plan to. He positioned the rifle, sighting on the area where he'd seen movement. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Leanne ran. Cole opened fire, working the lever action smooth and fast, sending rounds toward anything that moved. He saw one man dive for cover, another's hat fly off. Return fire came quick but scattered. They hadn't expected the sudden aggression. Leanne was halfway there when she stumbled. Cole's heart stopped, but she caught herself, kept moving. Bullets kicked up dirt around her feet. Cole shifted aim, fired at the muzzle flash, heard someone curse. Then Leanne was sliding into the ravine, disappearing from view. "I'm here!" she called. "Come on!" Cole ran. The distance felt like miles, every step expecting the bullet that would drop him. The rifle was empty, so he drew his revolver, firing backward without aiming, just trying to keep heads down. Something tugged at his sleeve, a bullet passing through fabric, but he didn't slow. He hit the ravine hard, rolling, rocks scraping skin. Leanne grabbed his arm, pulling him deeper into cover. "You're bleeding," she said. Cole looked down. His sleeve was torn, a shallow graze across his forearm, leaking red. "Doesn't matter. We need to move." They pushed along the ravine, crouched low, using the natural depression for cover. Behind them, the cabin continued burning, flames eating through everything Cole had built in 5 years of isolation. Everything except the stone foundation and the memories, which couldn't burn no matter how hot the fire. The ravine climbed gradually, taking them up the slope toward higher ground. Cole's lungs burned, legs shaking from exertion and adrenaline. Beside him, Leanne kept pace, the shotgun clutched tight, her breathing harsh but steady. They reached a point where the ravine opened onto a shelf of rock that overlooked the cabin site. Cole pulled them into a natural alcove, finally allowing himself to stop and assess. Below, the cabin was nearly gone. Just walls and framework now, flames guttering as they ran out of fuel. He could see 3 figures moving in the firelight. 3, not 4. "Where's the 4th man?" he muttered. "Maybe you hit him." Maybe. But doubt nagged. 4 men had come. He could account for 3. The 4th could be dead, wounded, or somewhere they couldn't see. And unknown positions were the most dangerous kind. A scrape of boot on rock was the only warning. Cole spun, bringing up his revolver, but too slow. The 4th man was already there, emerging from the darkness with a rifle trained on Leanne. "Don't," the man said. Young voice, unsteady. The messenger from earlier. "Just don't. Put the gun down." Cole recognized him, the reluctant one, the one who'd called this a job instead of a mission. His rifle was aimed at Leanne's head from maybe 8 feet, close enough that missing would be impossible. "Easy," Cole said, not lowering his own gun. "Nobody needs to die here." "Then put it down. The gun. Now." The young man's hands were shaking slightly, scared, which made him more dangerous, not less. "You kill her. I kill you," Cole said quietly. "That's how this ends." "You willing to die for Garrett's money?" "I'm willing to do my job." "Your job is hunting people, treating a woman like she's something to be bought and sold. That sit right with you?" "What sits right doesn't matter. What is. But there was doubt in his voice. "Just put down the gun and come quiet. Garrett just wants her. He doesn't care about you." "I care about me," Cole said. "And I care about her. So we've got a problem." The standoff held, 3 people with weapons, no one willing to blink first. In the distance, Cole heard Garrett calling for the young man. Williams, it sounded like, voice getting closer. "They're coming," Williams said. "You've got about 30 seconds to decide how this goes." Leanne's voice was soft but clear. "I'm not going back. I'll die first." "You don't mean that." "Yes, I do." She looked at the young man with absolute certainty. "I've been property. Been owned. I won't be that again. So you shoot me or you let us go, but you don't take me alive." William's rifle wavered slightly. "I don't want to shoot you." "Then don't," Cole said. "Just walk away. Tell Garrett we got away in the dark. Tell him whatever you want. But let us go." "I can't do that." "You can. It's a choice, same as every choice. You just make it." Garrett's voice was closer now, maybe 50 yards down the ravine. Williams glanced that direction, conflict clear on his face. "Please," Leanne said, and the word carried weight, not begging, but asking, human to human. "I'm just trying to live. That's all. Just live." Something shifted in Williams' expression. The rifle lowered just an inch. "I didn't see you," he said quietly. "You understand? I came up here. You were already gone. I don't know which direction." Cole didn't lower his gun, didn't trust it yet. "Why?" "Because she's right. This isn't right. None of it." Williams stepped back. "Go. Before I change my mind or Garrett finds us." They didn't need telling twice. Cole grabbed Leanne's hand and they moved, scrambling up the rocks, putting distance between them and the voices below. Behind them, Williams started yelling, confusion in his voice, calling that he'd lost them. They'd gone west, away from the truth of their direction. They climbed hard, no longer following the ravine but going straight up, using hands and feet, fear giving them strength they didn't know they had. The voices faded below, pursuit confused by Williams' misdirection. At the top of the ridge, Cole finally stopped, lungs screaming. Leon collapsed beside him, gasping. Below, the burning cabin was a bright point in darkness, figures moving around it like ants. They'd bought distance, but not safety. "We need to keep moving," Cole said when he could breathe again. "They'll figure out Williams lied, then they'll track us for real." "Where do we go?" Good question. Carson City was closest, but also most obvious. Garrett would expect them to run for civilization, for the law that probably wouldn't help anyway. North meant mountains, and cold as spring nights still carried winter's edge. South meant more desert, more emptiness. East, Cole decided. There's an old mining camp about 12 miles from here. Abandoned years ago, but the buildings might still be standing. We can shelter there, rest, figure out next moves. 12 miles in the dark. You got a better idea? She didn't. They started walking, using the stars for navigation, trying to balance speed with stealth. The desert at night was treacherous, rocks invisible, ravines opening without warning, things that bit and stung hiding in shadows. But it was also vast, and vastness could swallow people who wanted to disappear. They walked for hours, speaking little, conserving energy. Cole's arm ached where the bullet had grazed it, and his legs felt like rubber, but he pushed on. Beside him, Leon stumbled occasionally, but never stopped, never complained. Around midnight, the moon rose, making navigation easier, but also making them more visible. Cole tried to stick to shadows, to low ground, anywhere that broke up their silhouette against the sky. "Tell me about the mining camp," Leon said quietly. "Maybe just to keep moving, keep focused." Not much to tell. It was a silver claim that played out fast. Maybe 20 buildings at its peak, less than a year before everyone left. "I explored it once when I first came out here, looking for salvage." He paused, remembering. "It's empty. Dead. But the structures were solid, stone mostly, built to last even though the silver didn't. Why didn't you stay there instead of building your cabin?" "Too many ghosts. Places where people gave up feel wrong, like the failure soaked into the walls." He realized the irony. "Guess I built my own ghost house anyway. Just took 5 years instead of 5 months." "Your cabin wasn't a ghost house. It was alive when I got there. Growing things, water flowing, just lonely." "Yeah, well, lonely and dead aren't so different sometimes." They crested a rise and Cole stopped, getting his bearings. The land looked unfamiliar in moonlight, features distorted. He thought the camp was northeast, but the desert had a way of turning you around without you noticing. "You lost?" Leon asked. "Reorienting." He scanned the horizon, looking for landmarks. There, a distinctive rock formation that looked like a broken tooth. He'd seen it before, which meant the camp was another hour east. "We're on track, keep moving." Dawn was threatening when they finally saw it, dark shapes against the lightening sky, too regular to be natural. The mining camp, still standing after all these years of neglect. They approached careful, watching for signs of habitation, but the place was as empty as Cole remembered. The buildings were stone and timber, roofs mostly intact though everything sagged with age and weather. Cole led them to the largest structure, probably the company office once, and checked inside. Dust thick as carpet, broken furniture, papers scattered and faded. But it was shelter, defensible, with multiple exits. "We'll rest here for a few hours," he said, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. "Take turns keeping watch." "I'll watch first," Leon said. "You need sleep more than me." He wanted to argue but couldn't find the energy. He settled against a wall, rifle across his lap, and was asleep in seconds. Dreams came unwelcome, the cabin burning, Sarah's face in the flames, Garrett's voice asking why she mattered. Cole woke with a jerk to find Leon shaking his shoulder, morning sun streaming through gaps in the walls. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Cole was on his feet instantly, pain and stiffness forgotten. "How many?" "I only saw one. On foot, coming slow from the south." They positioned themselves on either side of the doorway, weapons ready. Footsteps approached, deliberate but not particularly stealthy. Then a familiar voice called out, Mercer, you in there? It's Williams. Cole and Leon exchanged glances. Could be a trap, could be genuine. Either way, the kid knew they were here. What do you want? Cole called back. To talk. Just talk. I'm not armed. A pause. I came alone. Garrett doesn't know I'm here. How'd you find us? Tracked you. Wasn't hard once the sun came up. You left a trail a blind man could follow. Cole swore quietly. In their desperation to escape, they'd been careless. Step where I can see you, hands visible. Williams appeared in the doorway, hands raised, no weapons visible. He looked exhausted, dust-covered, and genuinely alone. Cole checked the area behind him anyway, rifle ready, but saw no one. Say what you came to say, Cole told him. Garrett's planning to hit Carson City. He's got contacts there going to spread word about Lan, about the murder in San Francisco, make sure law enforcement knows she's wanted. Once she's a fugitive official, he can take her legal. Or near enough. Cole's stomach dropped. When? He wrote out this morning, should reach town by noon. Why are you telling us this? Williams met his eyes, something broken and honest there. Because I'm tired of doing wrong things and calling them right. Because what Garrett's doing, what we've all been doing, it's not a job. It's just cruelty with a paycheck. He lowered his hands. I don't expect you to trust me, but I figured you deserved a warning. You're throwing away your job for us, Leon said quietly. For people you don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally doing something I can live with. He looked at her. What you said last night, about just wanting to live, that got to me. Made me remember when I wanted the same thing before I started settling for survival. Cole studied the young man, looking for deception, for the angle. Found nothing but exhaustion that mirrored his own. If we go to Carson City, we're walking into whatever Garrett's setting up, he said. Yeah, but if you don't, you're fugitives anyway. At least if you get there first, you might have a chance to tell your side. The law doesn't care about sides. They care about contracts and property rights and keeping things simple. Some law doesn't, Williams agreed. But Judge Winters, the one who married you, he's not like that. He actually reads the law, not just the profitable parts. You can trust him, I think. It was thin. A thread of hope based on a stranger's assessment of a judge's character. But it was more than they'd had 5 minutes ago. Why should we believe you? Leon asked. You hunted me, helped burn down our home. You shouldn't believe me. You should do what I say and stay suspicious the whole time, but you're out of good options. Williams pulled something from his pocket. Cole tensed, but it was just a canteen. He tossed it to them. Water. And there's food in my pack outside. Take it. You'll need strength if you're going to ride to Carson City. We don't have horses, Cole said. Mine's tied up 20 yards back. Not much, but she'll carry you both. Williams smiled tiredly. Consider it my resignation bonus. Cole wanted to refuse, but practicality won. They needed water, food, transportation. Whether Williams was genuine or this was an elaborate trap, they needed what he was offering. If this is a trick, he started, then I'm the dumbest con man alive, giving away my horse and supplies. Williams shook his head. It's not a trick. It's just me trying to do one decent thing before I figure out what comes next. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Garrett's got a letter. Claims to be from the house in San Francisco describing Leon, putting a price on her return. I don't know if it's real or if he forged it, but he'll use it as evidence that she's stolen property. Can you get the letter? Cole asked. No, he keeps it on him, but I can tell you what it says, and that might help the judge see through it. He recited the letter's contents from memory, florid language about valuable property, contractual obligations, the importance of enforcing agreements, legal sounding enough to seem official, vague enough to hide the brutal reality underneath. Thank you, Leon said when he finished. Simple words, but genuine. Williams nodded once, then walked away, disappearing into the desert morning without looking back. Cole and Lan stood in the doorway, watching him go. Do we trust him? She asked. I don't know, but we use what he gave us either way. Cole gathered their few possessions. We've got maybe 4 hours before Garrett gets his story into official channels. If we're going to beat him there, we need to move now. They found Williams' horse where he'd said, a decent mare already saddled. The pack had food, more water, even ammunition that fit Cole's rifle. Either the best trap ever laid or genuine help. No way to know except by seeing what came next. They rode hard, pushing the horse as much as they dared, racing the sun toward Carson City and whatever waited there. The desert blurred past, familiar and alien at once. Cole's mind spun through scenarios, trying to plan for contingencies, but everything came back to the same problem. They were betting everything on a judge's fairness in a system built to favor property over people. "What if it doesn't work?" Leanne asked, voice nearly lost in the wind of their passage. "What if the judge believes Garrett? Then we run again. Farther this time. Maybe California, maybe north to Oregon. How long can we keep running?" "As long as we have to." She was quiet for a while, then, "I don't want to run anymore." "I know. I want to stand, want to make them answer for what they've done." "That's the plan, but standing might mean losing. I've lost before. I'm still here." Her arms tightened around his waist. They were riding double, her behind him. "We're still here." Carson City appeared on the horizon around 11, buildings shimmering in heat. They rode straight through, ignoring stairs, heading for the courthouse. Cole's arm throbbed, his whole body ached, and fear sat heavy in his gut. But he kept moving because stopping meant surrender, and he wasn't ready for that yet. Judge Winters was in his office, reviewing papers. He looked up when they entered, surprise flashing across his face. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." "We need your help," Cole said without preamble. "Men are coming, might already be here, trying to take my wife." "Claiming she's property under some contract. They burned down my cabin last night trying to flush us out." The judge's expression hardened. "Sit. Tell me everything." So they did. Cole let Leanne tell most of it, her story to tell, her truth to speak. She laid it out clear and unflinching, the contract she'd signed without understanding, the brothel she'd been sold to, the violence she'd escaped, the man she'd killed in self-defense. The judge listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When she finished, he sat back thinking. "You killed a man in San Francisco," he said finally. "That's going to complicate things. He was going to kill me, or worse. I believe you, but the law moves slow on belief and fast on documentation." He turned to Cole. "You married her knowing all this?" "Most of it. The parts that mattered. And you're willing to stand by her? Against men who'll use every legal tool they have?" "Yes." The judge nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. When these men arrive, we'll be ready." Judge Winters pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and started writing, his pen scratching quick and precise. "First thing we need is a statement. Everything you just told me, written down and signed. Then we file it with the territorial clerk before anyone else can muddy the waters." Cole watched the judge work. Tension coiled tight in his shoulders. "You think a statement will be enough? Against whatever documentation Garrett brings?" "No, but it establishes timeline, shows you came forward voluntarily, weren't hiding." Winters didn't look up from his writing. "The law favors whoever tells their story first and tells it official. We make your version the official version before Garrett can spin his own tale." Leanne sat forward. "But the man I killed, won't that make everything else irrelevant?" "Depends on how we frame it. Self-defense isn't murder, even in San Francisco. The problem is proving it after the fact, with no witnesses except the people who wanted you dead." He finished writing, slid the paper across. "Read this. Make sure it's accurate." Leanne read slowly, lips moving slightly. Cole watched her face, saw the moment she reached the part about the killing. Her jaw tightened, but she kept reading. "It's accurate," she said finally. "But it sounds cleaner than it was. More justified." "It was justified," Winters said flatly. "Man tried to sell you like cattle. You defended yourself. That's the law. Even if some lawmen forget it." He pulled out another form. "Now we need to establish your marriage beyond any doubt. I'm writing an affidavit confirming I personally performed the ceremony, that both parties were willing, that it meets all territorial requirements. Anyone wants to challenge it, they'll have to challenge me directly." "Will that matter?" Cole asked. "To men like Garrett?" "It matters to me. And I'm the law in this courthouse." Winters signed the affidavit with a flourish. "Now, when Garrett arrives, and he will arrive, he's going to demand I issue a warrant for Mrs. Mercer's arrest. He'll have documentation, probably a telegram from San Francisco authorities requesting her return. It'll look official because men like Garrett know how to make lies look like truth. So what do? We force a hearing, public, on record, where both sides present evidence. The judge stood, gathering the papers. I'll require witnesses, testimony, examination of these supposed contracts. Most importantly, I'll ask questions Garrett won't want to answer. Leanne's hands twisted in her lap. What if the contract is real? What if I really did sign something binding? Then we argue that a contract signed under duress without understanding by someone who doesn't speak the language. That contract isn't valid. It's coercion dressed up as agreement. Winters met her eyes. But I need you to be honest with me. Did you sign anything? Make any marks? Any agreements? Yes. When I first arrived in San Francisco, they put papers in front of me, said it was for passage documentation. I made my mark where they showed me. She swallowed hard. I didn't know what it said. The words were English, and what little they translated was lies. That's what I thought. The judge opened his office door, called for his clerk. Samuel, file these immediately and send word to Sheriff Morrison. Tell him I need to see him right away. The clerk scurried off. Winters turned back to Cole and Leanne. You two need to stay visible. Don't hide. Don't run. Eat at the hotel dining room. Walk the streets. Let people see you as a married couple going about normal business. When Garrett shows up making accusations, I want townsfolk able to say they saw you acting like honest people, not fugitives. You want us to be bait, Cole said. I want you to be exactly what you are. Two people trying to live legally while someone tries to drag you back into darkness. Winters pulled on his coat. There's a difference between bait and standing your ground. You're doing the latter. The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, a heavy-set man named Morrison, with sharp eyes and a face that suggested he'd seen everything twice. Winters briefed him quickly, leaving nothing out. Chinese girl, dead man in San Francisco, marriage of convenience, Morrison summarized when the judge finished. And now hunters coming to collect their prize. He looked at Leanne with something that might have been sympathy. You picked a hard road, Mrs. Mercer. I didn't pick it. I just walked it because it was the only one that didn't lead straight to hell. Morrison's mouth twitched, might have been the start of a smile. Fair enough. Judge says you want to fight this legal? We want to fight it however it needs fighting, Cole said. Legal's just the first option. I like honesty. The sheriff turned to Winters. You really think we can make this stick? The marriage? The self-defense claim? All of it? I think if we don't try, we're no better than the men hunting her, and I didn't take this job to enforce slavery with extra steps. Morrison nodded slowly. All right, I'll back your play. But when this Garrett fellow shows up, we do it by the book. No gunfights in my streets if we can avoid it. Agreed, Cole said, though his hand unconsciously checked his revolver. They left the courthouse into afternoon heat that pressed down like a physical weight. Cole bought them food from a street vendor, meat pies that were probably more gristle than anything else, but they were hot and filling. They ate standing on the boardwalk, watching the town move around them. Feels strange, Leanne said quietly, being out in the open, not hiding. Yeah. Cole scanned the street, marking faces, looking for threats. But the judge is right. We act guilty. People assume we are. We act normal. Maybe some of them will question Garrett's story when he tells it. You think people here will care about what happens to a Chinese woman? Some will, some won't, but all we need is enough doubt that the law can't ignore it. He finished his pie, wiped his hands on his pants. Come on, let's get a room at the hotel. If we're being visible, might as well be comfortable. The hotel clerk gave them a long look when they registered, but took Cole's money without comment. The room was small, clean, with a window overlooking the main street. Cole checked the locks, the sight lines, the escape routes, old habits from a war he'd tried to forget. You should rest, he told Leanne. Real rest, in a real bed. I'll keep watch. We could both rest. The sheriff's watching for Garrett. Sheriff's watching the law. I'm watching for everything else. But exhaustion was pulling at him, making his thoughts slow and sticky. Maybe we take turns, few hours each. She didn't argue, just removed her boots and lay down fully clothed. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Cole sat by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the street below and trying not to think about how quickly his life had turned inside out. 4 days ago, he'd been alone, content in his isolation, expecting nothing from the world except to be left in peace. Now he had a wife, enemies, and was betting everything on the fairness of a system he'd stopped trusting years ago. It was madness, but somehow it felt more real than anything had in 5 years. Lian stirred in her sleep, murmuring something in Chinese. Cole watched her, the stranger who'd become the center of his purpose so quickly it almost frightened him. She was right that he barely knew her, right that time didn't measure worth, but sometimes knowing happened fast, in moments rather than years. He'd known Sarah for months before admitting he loved her. With Lian it wasn't love, not yet, maybe never, but it was something. Partnership, purpose, a reason to be more than just a man waiting to die. Garrett arrived at sundown, riding down the main street with 2 men flanking him. Williams wasn't among them. Wherever the kid had gone after giving them his horse, it wasn't back to Garrett's side. The 3 men tied their horses outside the sheriff's office and went inside, confident and unhurried. Cole watched from the window, every muscle tensed. They're here. Lian was beside him instantly, sleep vanishing. How many? 3. Garrett and 2 others. Williams isn't with them. Maybe he really did walk away. Maybe. Cole grabbed his rifle. We should get down there. If they're filing charges, we want to hear it firsthand. They descended to the street just as Garrett emerged from the sheriff's office, looking satisfied. He saw them and stopped, a smile crossing his scarred face. Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Mercer. He made the title sound like an insult. Convenient, finding you here. Saves me the trouble of tracking you down. We're not hiding, Cole said evenly. Got nothing to hide from. No? Sheriff seems to think different. Says there's some questions about your wife's past. About a man who died in San Francisco. Garrett pulled a folded paper from his coat. I've got a telegram here from the city marshal. They're very interested in talking to Miss Joe about that unfortunate incident. It's Mrs. Mercer, Lian said, her voice steady despite the fear Cole could see in her eyes. And I'll be happy to answer questions about defending myself from a man who was trying to sell me. Defending yourself. That's a pretty story. Garrett unfolded the telegram, made a show of reading. Marshall calls it murder. Says the victim was a respected businessman, owner of a legitimate employment agency. Says you stole money and property when you fled. Respected businessman. Lian's laugh was bitter. Is that what they're calling flesh peddlers now? People were gathering, drawn by the confrontation. Cole saw the sheriff emerge from his office, Judge Winters a step behind. The judge's face was grim but unsurprised. Mr. Garrett, Winters said formally, I understand you're making accusations against Mrs. Mercer. Not accusations, Judge, facts. She's wanted for murder in San Francisco. I've got the documentation right here. A telegram isn't documentation. It's a request for information. Winters descended the steps, moving between Garrett and Lian. And before we discuss San Francisco, we need to discuss your actions here in Nevada. I've received reports that you burned a man's home, shot at civilians, and attempted to kidnap a married woman. Garrett's smile didn't waver. I attempted to recover stolen property under a legal contract. The fact that Miss Joe tricked Mr. Mercer into a fraudulent marriage doesn't change her obligations. The marriage isn't fraudulent. I performed it myself, filed all proper documentation. It's as legal as any marriage in this territory. Legal maybe, but not legitimate. Marriage of convenience to avoid consequences isn't protection, it's conspiracy. Garrett looked at Cole. You really want to throw your life away for a woman you've known less than a week? Who killed a man? Who'll bring nothing but trouble? She's brought plenty of trouble, Cole agreed. But it's trouble worth having, and she's my wife, which means her troubles are mine. That's how marriage works. Noble, stupid, but noble. Garrett turned back to Winters. I'm requesting you hold her pending investigation by San Francisco authorities. It's standard procedure for fugitives. She's not a fugitive. She's a resident of Nevada, legally married, with no outstanding warrants in this territory. Winters pulled out the papers he'd filed earlier. Furthermore, she's filed a formal complaint against you for arson, attempted kidnapping, and assault. I could arrest you right now. The crowd murmured at that. Garrett's confidence flickered for the first time. On her word against mine? On her word, her husband's testimony, and evidence of a burned cabin that I'll be riding out to examine tomorrow. Winters stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Garrett. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, we hold a hearing. Public hearing on record. You present your evidence that Mrs. Mercer is bound by contract and should be returned to San Francisco. We present ours that she was the victim of illegal trafficking and acted in self-defense. Then I make a ruling based on law, not threats. And if I refuse? Then I arrest you for the crimes Mrs. Mercer has already accused you of. Your choice. Garrett's jaw worked. Cole could see him calculating, weighing options. Finally, he nodded. Fine. We'll do this legal. But when that hearing proves I'm right, I'm taking her back and pressing charges against anyone who helped her. If the hearing goes your way, we'll discuss appropriate next steps. Winters gestured to the sheriff. Mr. Morrison will ensure everyone stays peaceful until tomorrow. No confrontations, no violence, no attempts to resolve this outside the law. Morrison's hand rested on his gun belt. That clear, gentlemen? Reluctant nods all around. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that violence hadn't erupted. Cole took Leon's arm, guiding her back toward the hotel. Wait, Garrett called. They stopped. One question for Mrs. Mercer. When you cut that man in San Francisco, when you killed him, did you hesitate? Feel any remorse? Or did you just do it cold? Leon turned, met his eyes. I felt relieved, because for the first time since being brought to this country, I took control of my own life. I stopped being property and became a person again. So, no, I didn't hesitate, and I'd do it again. The honesty of it rippled through the remaining crowd. Some faces showed disgust, but others, particularly some of the women, showed something else. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. Garrett's expression hardened. See you tomorrow, Mrs. Mercer. We'll let the law decide who's right. Looking forward to it, she said, and meant it. Back in the hotel room, Cole barred the door and checked the window locks again. His hands were shaking slightly, aftermath of adrenaline and the realization of how close they'd come to violence. You did good, he told Leon, standing up to him like that. I'm terrified. My hands haven't stopped shaking since we left the courthouse. She held them up as proof, but I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of men like Garrett thinking fear means they own me. Tomorrow's going to be hard. He'll have documents, testimony, things that look official. And we've got what? Our word and the judge's willingness to listen? We've got the truth. That has to count for something. Truth gets beaten by paperwork every day. Cole sat heavily on the bed. I'm not trying to scare you, just being realistic. Even if Winters wants to rule in our favor, if Garrett's evidence looks legitimate, the judge's hands might be tied. Then we make sure our evidence looks more legitimate. Leanne started pacing, thinking. The contract I signed, I can describe exactly what happened. How they translated false terms, pressured me, made it impossible to refuse. That has to undermine the contract's validity. It should, but it's your word against theirs. No, it's my word. Your testimony about my condition when you found me, Williams's information about Garrett's methods if he's willing to testify, and the judge's legal expertise on contract law. She stopped pacing. We're not as defenseless as Garrett thinks. Cole wanted to believe that. Wanted to trust that right would win because it was right. But he'd lived long enough to know better. We should prepare, he said. Write down everything you remember about that contract signing. Every detail, every person present, every word they said. The more specific you are, the harder it is to dismiss. They spent the evening doing exactly that. Leanne dictating, Cole writing, building a timeline of her journey from China to San Francisco to his cabin. Some parts she struggled with, memory failing or pain making her skip ahead. Cole was patient, asking gentle questions, helping her find the details that would make her story real to people who didn't want to believe it. When they first brought you to the house, he asked, what did you think was going to happen? I thought I'd be a servant, clean houses, cook, care for children maybe. That's what they'd told my father. Respectable domestic work. Her voice went flat. First night, they locked me in a room with bars on the window. Second night, a man came in with money. That's when I understood what kind of house it really was. Cole's hand tightened on the pen. Did he? No. I fought, screamed, made enough noise that other girls came running, and he decided I was too much trouble. She paused. They beat me for that. Said I'd learn or I'd starve. But I didn't learn. I just waited for my chance to run. How long were you there? 6 months. 6 months of fighting, refusing, getting punished for it. Then the man I killed, his name was Chen, he said he'd found someone who specialized in difficult girls. Someone who'd break me or kill me trying. That's when I knew waiting was over. Cole wrote it all down, his handwriting getting harder to read as anger made his grip tighten. This was the truth Garrett wanted to bury under legal paperwork and official-sounding accusations. The truth that Leanne had been merchandise from the moment she'd stepped off the boat. Near midnight, they finished. Cole's hand ached from writing, and Leon looked hollowed out from revisiting those memories. But they had pages of testimony now, specific, detailed, impossible to wave away as mere lies. "Get some sleep," Cole said. "Tomorrow's going to be long." "You should sleep too." "I will. Just need to think first." But thinking turned to brooding, and brooding turned to pacing the small room like a caged animal. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that Garrett had something planned, some piece of evidence or legal maneuvering that would sweep aside everything they'd prepared. "Cole," Leon's voice from the bed. "Come here." He moved to sit beside her, suddenly aware of how much space they'd been keeping between them despite sharing rooms. She reached out, took his hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know, you gave me hope. Real hope. Not the false kind that keeps you compliant. You stood up when you could have walked away. That matters. It matters to me. We're not done yet. Don't talk like we've lost." "I'm not. I'm just saying, in case I don't get another chance." "Thank you." Cole squeezed her hand, rough and calloused against his own. "You'll have plenty of chances. We're going to win this." "You really believe that?" "I have to. The alternative isn't acceptable." She smiled faintly. "That's not the same as believing." "No, but it's close enough for now." They sat in silence for a while, hands linked, drawing strength from the simple human contact. Eventually, Leanne's breathing evened into sleep. Cole stayed there beside her, keeping watch even though there was nothing to watch for except his own fears and doubts. Morning came too fast and too slow at once. They dressed carefully, Leanne in the cleanest dress she had, Cole in his one good shirt, making themselves look respectable, legitimate, like people whose word should matter. The courthouse was already filling when they arrived. Word had spread, and half the town wanted to see the hearing. They pushed through the crowd to where Judge Winters waited. "You ready?" he asked. "As we'll ever be," Cole said. "Good. Remember, stay calm, answer questions directly, don't let Garrett provoke you into anger. The moment you lose composure, you lose credibility." Winters looked at Leanne. "Especially you, Mrs. Mercer. He's going to try to paint you as violent, unstable criminal. You need to be the opposite, controlled, rational, clear." "I understand," Sheriff Morrison called for order as people settled into seats. Garrett sat at one table with his remaining men and a thin man in a suit who was apparently a lawyer from Virginia City. Cole and Leanne sat at another table with Judge Winters. The hearing began with Morrison reading the formal accusations, that Leanne Jo Mercer was bound by legal contract to an employment agency in San Francisco, that she'd broken said contract through theft and murder, that her subsequent marriage was fraudulent attempt to avoid consequences. Each word felt like a weight pressing down. Then Garrett's lawyer stood, presenting documents. A contract bearing what he claimed was Leon's mark. A telegram from San Francisco authorities requesting her return for questioning in a murder investigation. Witness statements from people Leon had never met, claiming they'd seen her kill Chen in cold blood rather than self-defense. "The facts are clear," the lawyer concluded. "Miss Jo, and I use her maiden name because the marriage is legally questionable at best, entered into a binding agreement. She violated that agreement through violence and theft. The marriage to Mr. Mercer was a transparent attempt to avoid justice." Winters stood slowly. "You present an interesting case, Mr. Hawthorne. Very official-looking documents, very serious accusations. Now, let me ask you some questions." "Of course, Your Honor." "This contract you've presented, it's in English, correct?" "Yes." "And Miss Jo spoke English when she signed it?" "I cannot attest to her language abilities at that time." Then how do you know she understood what she was signing?" Winters picked up the contract. "This document is complex. Legal terminology, obligations spanning years, penalties for violation. Can you demonstrate she comprehended any of it?" Hawthorne shifted. The contract's validity doesn't depend on her comprehension. She made her mark, which constitutes legal agreement. In what year did you pass the bar, Mr. Hawthorne? 1871, Your Honor. Then you should know that contract law requires meeting of minds. Both parties must understand the terms they're agreeing to. A contract signed under misrepresentation or without comprehension is voidable. Winters set down the paper. But let's move past that for now. These witness statements about the murder. Did any of these witnesses testify under oath? They gave statements to San Francisco authorities. That's not what I asked. Did they testify under oath in a legal proceeding where they could be cross-examined? The investigation is ongoing, so the answer is no. Winters turned to the crowd. These statements are hearsay, unverified claims from people who aren't even present to be questioned. In any legitimate court, they'd be inadmissible. Cole felt a surge of hope. The judge wasn't just defending them, he was systematically dismantling Garrett's case. Hawthorne tried to recover. Your Honor, the telegram from San Francisco authorities is a request for information, not a warrant, not an indictment, not evidence of anything except that someone in San Francisco wants to talk to Mrs. Mercer, which is very different from proving she's guilty of murder. Winters gestured to Leanne. Mrs. Mercer, would you stand, please? She stood, back straight, meeting the judge's eyes. Are you willing to answer questions about what happened in San Francisco? Yes, Your Honor. Under oath, knowing that perjury carries criminal penalties? Yes. Winters turned to Garrett. Mr. Garrett, are you willing to testify under oath about your actions in pursuit of Mrs. Mercer? Garrett's eyes narrowed. If necessary. It's necessary. Sheriff Morrison, swear them both in. The next hour was brutal. Lyon testified about the contract signing, the house, the attempted sale, her fight for survival. Hawthorne tried to trip her up, find contradictions, make her seem unreliable, but she stayed steady, answering each question with painful honesty. Then it was Garrett's turn. Winters asked about the house in San Francisco, the nature of the employment, how girls were recruited. Garrett tried to deflect, but the judge pressed relentlessly. What exactly was the employment Miss Joe contracted for? Domestic service, initially. If that didn't work out, there were other options. What other options? Hospitality work, entertaining guests. Prostitution, Winters said flatly. Call it what it is. Legal in San Francisco, Your Honor. Being legal doesn't make the contract binding, especially when the person signing didn't know what they were agreeing to. Winters pulled out the papers Cole and Leanne had prepared. Mrs. Mercer's testimony, backed by written account, shows a pattern of deception and coercion. Your so-called contract was fraud from the start. Hawthorne stood. Your Honor, even if we accept that the original contract was problematic, the matter of the murder remains. Self-defense, Winters corrected. Mrs. Mercer has testified that Chen was arranging to sell her to someone who specialized in breaking resistant women through violence. She acted to preserve her life and bodily autonomy. That's textbook self-defense, with no witnesses except her own testimony. And no witnesses except hearsay supporting your murder claim. Winters sat back. Here's what I see, gentlemen. I see a young woman brought to this country under false pretenses, sold into prostitution against her will, held against her consent. When she fought back against further victimization, she's being painted as criminal rather than survivor. He looked at Garrett. And I see men who profit from such victimization trying to use the law to reclaim what they view as property. Your Honor, Hawthorne tried. I'm not finished. I've reviewed the marriage certificate. I personally performed the ceremony. Both parties entered freely, both understood the commitment. All legal requirements were met. The marriage is valid. Mrs. Mercer is a legal resident of Nevada, married to a citizen with no outstanding warrants in this territory. Garrett stood abruptly. So she just gets away with murder? Gets to hide behind a fraudulent marriage? The marriage isn't fraudulent, and if San Francisco wants to pursue charges, they can file proper extradition paperwork, and we'll review it according to law. But they'll have to prove their case, not just make accusations, and Mrs. Mercer will have the right to defend herself with her full testimony about what that house really was. Winters gathered his papers. My ruling is this. Mrs. Mercer is free to remain in Nevada. The contract presented by Mr. Garrett is invalid due to fraud and coercion. No arrest warrant will be issued at this time. Mr. Garrett and his associates are ordered to cease any further harassment of Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, or they'll face charges for arson, assault, and attempted kidnapping. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, others protested. Garrett's face went purple with rage. He started toward Leon, but Sheriff Morrison was there instantly, hand on his gun. "Don't," the sheriff said quietly. "You've lost legal. Don't make it worse by getting stupid." Garrett trembled with fury but stopped. He looked at Leon with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is," Cole said, standing between them. "You've got no legal claim, no moral ground, nothing but anger and wounded pride. Walk away while you still can. Or what? You'll kill me like she killed Chen?" "No, I'll let the sheriff arrest you for making threats. Then we'll see how you like being property of the legal system." For a moment, violence hung in the air between them, thick and deadly. Then Hawthorne grabbed Garrett's arm, pulling him back. "Let's go. We'll appeal to the territorial governor if we have to." "You can try," Winters said, "but I've ruled according to law and precedent. Any appeal will uphold that ruling." Garrett allowed himself to be let out, but his eyes promised this wasn't forgiveness. It was just tactical retreat. The crowd dispersed slowly, people coming up to congratulate or condemn them in equal measure. Cole kept Leon close, aware they'd won a battle, but not necessarily the war. Judge Winters approached, looking tired but satisfied. "You should leave town, tonight if possible. Garrett's type doesn't give up easy, and I can't protect you forever." "Where should we go?" Leon asked. "Anywhere but here, California maybe? Oregon? Somewhere far enough that Garrett decides you're not worth chasing anymore." He paused. "Unless you want to rebuild. You've got legal standing now. You could make a life here." Cole looked at Leon. "What do you think?" She surveyed the town, the people who'd watched her trial like it was entertainment, the mix of support and scorn. Then she looked at the desert beyond, vast and open and full of possibilities. "I think I want to go somewhere new, somewhere nobody knows us or cares about our past. Start clean." "California then," Cole decided. "We'll head west tomorrow." Winters nodded approvingly. "Smart choice. I'll write you letters of introduction. Won't guarantee anything, but might help." He shook Cole's hand. "You're a good man, Mr. Mercer. Don't let the hard things make you forget that." They left the courthouse into afternoon sunlight that felt different somehow, cleaner, brighter. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced by the lighter burden of possibility. "We won," Leanne said, like she couldn't quite believe it. "For now. But the judge is right. We should move on, build somewhere else." "Together?" Cole looked at her. This woman who'd been a stranger less than a week ago. His wife-in-law, but not in truth. His partner in survival, but not yet in life. "Yeah," he said, "together." They didn't leave that night like Winters suggested. Cole's instinct said to wait, to watch, to see what Garrett would do now that the law had turned against him. Men like Garrett didn't slink away quiet. They made noise, tried one last desperate play, or they accepted defeat and moved on to easier prey. Cole needed to know which kind Garrett was before turning his back on Carson City. They kept the hotel room, but Cole moved them to a different one on the opposite side of the building. Basic precaution. If Garrett wanted revenge badly enough to try something stupid, Cole wasn't going to make it easy by staying predictable. "You think he'll come tonight?" Leanne asked, watching Cole check the window locks for the third time. "I think he's deciding right now whether we're worth the risk. Law's against him, judge is watching, sheriff's not friendly, but pride makes men do stupid things." He positioned their supplies near the door, bags packed, weapons loaded, ready to move fast if needed. "We'll know by morning." They ate a cold dinner from provisions bought earlier, neither wanting to risk the dining room where they'd be exposed and vulnerable. Leanne picked at her food, exhaustion finally catching up with the fear she'd been holding back during the hearing. "I keep expecting someone to tell me it's a mistake," she said quietly. "That the ruling doesn't count, that I'm still property, that nothing's really changed." "It changed. You heard the judge. You're free. Legally, officially free." "Free." She tested the word like it might break in her mouth. "I don't know what that means yet. I've been running or trapped for so long, I forgot what it feels like to just be." Cole sat across from her, recognizing the particular exhaustion that came after survival. He'd felt it after the war, that hollow space where fear used to live, the strange emptiness of not having to fight anymore. It takes time, he said. Learning how to stop running even when nobody's chasing. Your body doesn't trust it at first. How long did it take you? After your war? Still working on it. He smiled without humor. 5 years in that cabin, and I was still jumping at shadows, still waiting for something to come take away whatever peace I'd built. And then I showed up and actually did take it away. You showed up and gave me something better than peace, gave me a reason to stop hiding. He met her eyes. I didn't realize how much I needed that until it happened. Leon was quiet for a moment, processing. What do we do now? Really do, I mean. California is big and empty. We can't just wander. We find a place that needs people willing to work. Somewhere growing, where 2 more bodies won't draw attention. Maybe farming country. Maybe a mining town that's still producing. Somewhere we can build something small and solid. You want a farm? I want to be useful. Don't much care how. He leaned back, thinking. What about you? What did you dream about doing before everything went wrong? She considered, like the question had never occurred to her. I used to help my mother with sewing, not just mending, real sewing, making clothes, wedding dresses, things that mattered. I was good at it. A pause. I thought maybe in America I could have a shop, make beautiful things for people. Stupid dream. Why is it stupid? Because women like me don't get shops. We get survival if we're lucky. You've got more than survival now. You've got legal standing, a husband with some skills, and the whole country ahead of you. Why not a shop? Cole warmed to the idea. I could do carpentry, build furniture or houses. You could sew. We'd make a life out of useful things. You really think it's possible? I think it's worth trying, and if it doesn't work, we try something else. That's what partners do. The word partners settled between them with weight and warmth. Not husband and wife in the traditional sense, not yet anyway. But partners, building towards something together. They took turns sleeping, Cole taking first watch. The night stayed quiet. No movement outside their window beyond the normal traffic of a frontier town winding down. Around 2 a.m, Leon woke him for his turn to rest. Nothing? He asked, groggy. Nothing. Maybe Garrett really is walking away. Maybe. But Cole's instinct still hummed with warning. He settled into the chair by the window, letting Leon take the bed and watch the empty street below. Dawn came soft and pink, promising heat later but gentle now. Cole had just started to relax, thinking maybe they'd made it through, when he saw movement, 3 figures on horseback at the far end of the street, just sitting there, watching. Leanne, he said quietly, get dressed. We're leaving. She was up instantly, no questions, pulling on boots and gathering their bags. Cole kept his eyes on the riders. They weren't approaching, weren't making threats, just watching, letting Cole know they were still there, still interested. Back exit, he decided. We go through the kitchen, out to the alley, get to the livery, get horses, and we're gone before they realize we've moved. They descended the back stairs quiet and quick, Cole leading with his rifle ready. The hotel kitchen was empty this early, just cold stoves and yesterday's dishes. They slipped through and into the alley behind, morning shadows still deep enough to hide them. The livery was 2 blocks over. They moved fast but not running. Running drew attention. Cole's eyes swept constantly, looking for ambush points, for the other shoe he knew was going to drop. It dropped when they were 20 feet from the livery entrance. Garrett stepped out from behind a water trough, alone but armed, his revolver already drawn and pointed at Leon. Thought you might try to slip out quiet, he said. I know I would. Cole's rifle came up, but Garrett shook his head. You're faster, I know. But I'm close enough that even if you kill me, my finger's pulling this trigger. Question is whether you love her enough to risk it. Cole's mind raced through options. Shoot Garrett. Hope his dying reflex doesn't hit Leanne. Try to talk him down. Create a distraction. None of them good. What do you want? He asked, buying time. I want to understand something. You threw away your home, your peace, almost your life. For what? A woman you barely know. A woman who's brought you nothing but trouble. Why? Already told you, she's my wife. That's not an answer. That's a title. Why does she matter to you? Cole glanced at Leanne, saw her watching him with something between fear and curiosity. Why did she matter? The honest answer was complicated, tangled up in loneliness and purpose and the simple human need to be more than just a man waiting to die. But Garrett wouldn't understand complicated. Because I choose to make her matter, Cole said finally. Same way she chose to keep fighting instead of giving up. Same way you chose to hunt her instead of letting her go. We're all just making choices, Garrett. I made mine. Noble choice. Wrong choice. Garrett's hand was steady on the gun. But I've made my choice too. I'm done with this. Done chasing, done fighting, done losing money, and men over one stubborn girl. So here's my final offer. You pay me $300 and I walk away for good. No more hunting, no more threats. Clean break. I don't have $300. Then find it. Sell your horse, your guns, beg from the judge. I don't care, but you get me $300 by noon, or I go to every newspaper in California and Nevada with her story. Make sure everyone knows about the Chinese murderer hiding behind a fraudulent marriage. Make her life impossible wherever you run. Cole felt Leon's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. That's extortion, she said. It's business, and it's a lot cheaper than what this has already cost both of us. Garrett's expression was tired more than angry. I'm offering you peace, Mrs. Mercer. Real peace. All it costs is money. We don't have money, Cole said. You burned our home, remember? Everything we owned went up with it. Not my problem. Figure it out or live looking over your shoulder forever. Garrett started backing away, guns still trained on them. Noon, $300. Meet me at the north end of town by the old mission. Come alone, bring the money, and this ends. He disappeared around a building, leaving them standing in the alley with a new impossible choice. We can't pay him, Leon said. We have maybe $40 between us. I know. Cole's mind was already working, but he's right about one thing. If he spreads your story, it'll follow you everywhere. Nevada, California, anywhere we try to settle. Someone will always be looking to collect a reward or cause trouble. So what do we do? Cole thought about Judge Winters, about Sheriff Morrison, about every decent person they'd encountered in Carson City. Then he thought about pride and pragmatism, and which mattered more. We ask for help. Winters was in his office early, reviewing papers when they knocked. He looked up, saw their faces, and sighed. Garrett? Making one last play. Wants $300 by noon, or he'll ruin us through newspapers and rumors. Cole laid out the demand. We can't pay it, but we can't ignore it either. The judge leaned back, thinking. $300 is a lot of money, more than I'd normally recommend paying to extortion. But, Leon prompted, but it might be worth it for the peace of mind, knowing he's really gone, really done. Winters pulled open a desk drawer, counted out bills. I can lend you $200. You'll pay me back when you can. No interest. Call it investment in justice. Judge, we can't. You can, and you will. I didn't spend 40 years in law to watch scum like Garrett win through intimidation. He set the money on the desk. That's $200. Where will you get the other $100? Cole thought of his horse, his rifle, everything he owned that might bring value. It wasn't enough. Not close. Sheriff Morrison appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by the conversation. Heard you folks might need help, he said, pulling out a worn wallet. I've got $50 here. Not much, but it's something. Sheriff, you don't have to keep. I know I don't, but I'm doing it anyway. He added his bills to the judge's. That's $250, still short. I'll find the rest, Cole said, though he had no idea how. They spent the next 3 hours desperate and creative, selling what little they had. Cole's saddle went to a rancher for $30, his good boots to a prospector for $10. Leon sold a silver bracelet she'd kept hidden, the last piece of her mother, for $15. Each transaction felt like cutting away pieces of themselves, but the pile of money grew. By 11:30, they had $295, $5 short. Close enough, Cole said, trying to convince himself. Maybe he'll take it. He won't. Leon's voice was flat with certainty. He'll see it as weakness and demand more. She was probably right. Men like Garrett didn't accept near misses. They saw them as opportunities to push harder. Cole was trying to figure out what else they could possibly sell when Williams appeared, looking haggard and uncertain. Heard you were scrambling for money, he said without preamble. Heard why? He pulled a small leather pouch from his pocket. There's $8 here. It's all I've got, but you're welcome to it. Cole stared at him. Why would you help us? You threw away your job for us. Now you're giving us your money? Because I need to believe good things can happen, that people who fight for each other can win. Williams pressed the pouch into Cole's hand. Take it. Make it count. With Williams's $8, they had $303. Enough with a little to spare. They rode to the old mission alone, as Garrett had demanded, arriving 5 minutes before noon. The building was crumbling adobe, abandoned decades ago when the priests moved on to more promising territory. Perfect place for a transaction nobody wanted witnessed. Garrett was waiting, still armed but looking as worn as they all felt. You got the money? Cole dismounted, pulled out the bills. 300, like you demanded. Garrett counted it slowly, twice, making sure. When he finished, he nodded. All right then. We're done. I go back to San Francisco, tell them the girl died or disappeared, case closed. You go wherever you're going and forget I exist. Deal? How do we know you'll keep your word? Leon asked. You don't. But I'm tired, Mrs. Mercer. Tired of chasing, tired of fighting people who won't quit. This money gets me back to San Francisco with my pride intact. That's enough. He pocketed the bills. But understand, this only works if you disappear. You show up in California, you make noise, you draw attention, all bets are off. Stay gone, stay quiet, and I'll leave you be. We're headed to Oregon, Cole lied smoothly. Farming country. You'll never see us again. Good. Garrett mounted his horse, looking down at them. You won. Not the way you wanted, maybe, but you're alive and free. That's more than most people in your position get. Don't waste it. He rode off without looking back, heading south toward the road to California. They watched until he was out of sight, until the dust of his passage settled, until the desert was empty again. Is it really over? Leon asked. I think so. But we still should leave Nevada, just to be safe. California like we planned, not Oregon. Start fresh where Garrett won't think to look if he changes his mind. They rode back to Carson City slow, processing what had just happened. They'd paid for their freedom with every dollar they could scrape together, every possession they could sell, and the kindness of near strangers. It should have felt like defeat. Instead, it felt like possibility. Judge Winters met them at his office, eyebrows raised in question. Cole nodded. It's done. He's gone. And you're broke. Completely. Cole smiled despite himself. But we're alive and clear. That's worth more than money. Indeed it is. Winters pulled out the letters of introduction he'd written. These are for you. One to a judge in Sacramento, one to a banker in San Francisco, one to a territorial administrator in Oregon in case you change your mind. They won't guarantee anything, but they establish that you're legitimate people, legally married, with no outstanding warrants. Use them if you need them. Thank you, Leon said, taking the letters carefully. For everything, the hearing, the money, the chance. Thank me by building a good life. That's all the payment I need. Sheriff Morrison walked them to the edge of town, where the road forked between north and west. They'd decided on California, after all. Sacramento first, to use Winter's introduction, then whatever opportunities presented themselves. You'll do all right, Morrison said, shaking Cole's hand. You've got grit, both of you. That counts for more than people think. Williams was waiting at the fork, sitting on his horse like he'd been there a while. Thought I'd ride with you a ways, he said when they approached. If you don't mind the company, I'm headed west anyway. Figure I might as well have traveling companions. Cole studied him. This kid who'd helped them twice, despite having every reason not to. You sure? Traveling with us might complicate things, if you're looking for new work. I'm done with that kind of work. Figure I'll try something honest for a change, see how it fits. Williams smiled uncertainly. Besides, you might need someone who knows the territory between here and Sacramento. Roads get dangerous if you don't know the safe routes. We'd appreciate the company, Leon said before Cole could overthink it. Thank you. They rode west together as the sun climbed toward afternoon. Three people who'd been enemies or strangers a week ago, now bound by the strange alchemy of shared survival. The road was rough, climbing into foothills that would eventually become the Sierra Nevada, but it was also beautiful, green from spring rain, alive with wildflowers and possibility. That first night, they camped in a clearing by a stream, building a small fire and sharing the meager supplies they'd managed to keep. Williams proved useful, knowing how to find good water and which plants were edible. Cole hunted, bringing back rabbits that Lian cooked with herbs she gathered. It was simple food, but it tasted like freedom. "What will you do in California?" Williams asked Lian as they ate. "You mentioned sewing back in the hearing." "Maybe, if I can find work." She looked at her hands, rough from the past week's hardships. "I'd like to make beautiful things again, things that matter to people. There's always need for good seamstresses, especially in growing towns where people want to look respectable." Williams poked at the fire. "My aunt runs a boarding house in Sacramento. I could introduce you. Maybe she'd know of opportunities." "You don't have to do that." "I want to. Call it finishing the job I started when I let you go instead of shooting you." Cole smiled at the grim humor. "What about you? What's an ex-hunter do in California?" "Honest work, I hope. Maybe freight hauling, maybe ranch hand. Something where I don't have to feel bad about what I'm doing." Williams looked up at the stars, bright and dense in the clear mountain air. "I spent 2 years tracking people for Garrett. 2 years making myself into someone I didn't recognize. Time to try being someone I can stand to see in mirrors." They were quiet for a while, each lost in their own thoughts about fresh starts and second chances. The fire crackled, the stream sang over rocks, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called to the night. "Cole?" Lian's voice was soft. "What do you want? Really want, I mean. Not just survival or safety, but something more." Cole thought about it, about the 5 years he'd spent choosing emptiness over risk, silence over connection, about Sarah and how he'd shut down after losing her, convinced that caring only led to pain. "I want to build something that lasts," he said finally. "Not just a house or a business, but a life. Something solid enough that when hard things come, and they will come, it doesn't all fall apart. I want to stop running from ghosts and start making new memories." "That sounds nice." She smiled at him across the fire. "I'd like to help build that, if you'll let me." "I was hoping you'd say that." The journey to Sacramento took 5 days of hard riding, 3 days of rest in small towns, and one terrifying afternoon when they spotted what might have been Garrett's men in the distance and had to detour 20 miles out of their way. But they made it, arriving in California's capital city on a warm afternoon in early May. Sacramento was bigger than Carson City, built on river trade and gold rush money that had mostly played out but left infrastructure behind. It was rough and refined in equal measures, saloons next to churches, brothels across from schools, fortune seekers, and legitimate businessmen sharing the same muddy streets. Williams led them to his aunt's boarding house, a 3-story structure that had seen better days but was clean and well maintained. His aunt, a formidable woman named Margaret Chen, greeted him with enthusiasm that turned to sharp assessment when she saw his companions. "You're the couple Thomas told me about in his letter," she said, studying them. "The ones with the complicated story." "That's us," Cole confirmed. "Thomas said you might know of work opportunities." "Might. Depends on what you can do and whether you're actually willing to do it." She turned to Lian. "Thomas says you sew." "How well?" "Very well. My mother taught me from childhood. I can make anything from work clothes to wedding dresses." "Prove it." Margaret pulled out a torn shirt. "Mend this so I can't tell it was damaged." Lian took the shirt, examined it, borrowed needle and thread from Margaret's sewing kit, and set to work. Her hands moved with practiced confidence, stitching invisible seams that drew the torn fabric together seamlessly. When she finished 10 minutes later, Margaret inspected it closely, then nodded. "You'll do. I know 3 businesses in town that need seamstresses. I'll introduce you tomorrow." She turned to Cole. "What about you?" "Carpentry, some blacksmithing, general labor. I'm not specialized, but I work hard and I learn fast." "Can you build?" "Built my own cabin. Well, built it once. Then someone burned it down, but that's another story." Margaret's mouth twitched. Might have been amusement. "There's a building boom happening, new houses going up for people moving in from played-out mining camps. Builders are always looking for workers who know one end of a hammer from another. I'll make introductions there too." "Why are you helping us?" Lian asked. "You don't know us." "No, but I know Thomas. And Thomas says you're good people who got dealt a bad hand. That's enough for me." She gestured to the stairs.
I've got a room on the third floor. Small, but it's private and the rate's fair. You can stay there while you get established. They took the room, barely big enough for a bed and a chair, but it was clean and safe and theirs.
That night, lying in the darkness listening to the city sounds outside, Cole felt something shift inside him. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't just surviving, he was living. "Leanne?" he said into the darkness. "Yeah? Thank you for not giving up, on yourself, on us, on any of this. Thank you for being worth not giving up on." The work came easier than expected. Margaret made good on her introductions, and within a week both Cole and Lyon were employed. Cole joined a construction crew building houses on the city's expanding edge, his experience and reliability quickly making him valuable. Leanne started at a dressmaker's shop, her skill with needle and thread impressing the owner enough that she was offered full-time work immediately. The money wasn't much at first, but it was honest and steady. They paid Margaret her rent, saved what they could, and slowly built towards something more permanent. Williams found work with a freight company, hauling goods between Sacramento and the mountain towns. He visited their boarding house room most evenings, and the three of them would share meals and stories, becoming something like family. 2 months after arriving in Sacramento, Cole came home to find Leon crying over a letter. "What's wrong?" he asked, instantly alert for threat. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right." She showed him the letter, from Judge Winters, forwarded through Margaret. He got a telegram from San Francisco. "Garrett's dead, killed in a saloon fight over a card game." Cole read the letter twice, making sure he understood. Garrett was gone, really gone. The threat that had hung over them, the possibility that he might change his mind or come back, was finished permanently. "We're really free," Leanne said, still crying. "Completely, totally free." Cole pulled her close, feeling his own eyes sting. They'd paid for that freedom with everything they had, and almost their lives. But they'd gotten it. Against odds that should have crushed them, they'd won. That evening, they walked to the river that gave Sacramento its life, watching the water flow golden in sunset light. Other couples walked the same path, shopkeepers and their wives, miners with their sweethearts, normal people living normal lives. Cole and Leanne weren't quite normal, weren't quite like everyone else, but they were building toward it. "I was thinking," Leanne said, watching the water, "about our marriage." Cole's stomach tightened. "Yeah?" "It started as convenience, protection, a piece of paper to keep me safe." She turned to look at him. "But it's become more than that, at least for me, and I was wondering if it has for you, too." "It has." The admission came easier than he expected. "I didn't think I'd care about anyone again after Sarah. Thought that part of me was dead. But you brought it back, Leanne. Made me remember what it feels like to want to be better for someone." "So what do we do about it?" "I think we start being married for real. Not just on paper, but in the ways that matter. Building together, choosing each other, making it mean something." He took her hand. "If that's what you want." "It is. But slowly. We don't have to rush into some version of married we think we're supposed to be. We can figure out our own version." "Slowly sounds good." They walked back to the boarding house as stars began appearing, hand in hand, two people who'd survived the worst and were learning to build towards something better. It wasn't perfect. Cole still had nightmares about the cabin burning. Leanne still flinched at unexpected noises. They both carried scars that wouldn't fully heal, but they were healing, together. 6 months later, they'd saved enough to rent a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, 2 rooms, a kitchen, space for Leanne's sewing and Cole's tools, but it was theirs. They moved in with help from Williams and Margaret, carrying their few possessions and building furniture from lumber Cole salvaged from construction sites. "It's not much," Cole said, surveying the empty space that would become their home. "It's perfect," Leanne countered. "It's ours and nobody can take it. That makes it perfect." They furnished it slowly, piece by piece. A bed Cole built, chairs Margaret gave them, a table Williams found abandoned and repaired. Curtains Leanne sewed from fabric scraps. Each item carried meaning, carried story, made the house more than just shelter. Leanne's sewing business grew as word spread about her skill. She started taking commissions for wedding dresses and formal wear, work that paid well and challenged her abilities. She hired 2 other Chinese women as assistants, giving them opportunities they wouldn't have found elsewhere. Cole got promoted to crew foreman, supervising construction of larger buildings, earning respect through competence and fairness. They weren't rich, weren't famous, weren't remarkable except in the ways that mattered to them. They were building a life from nothing, making something solid from the ruins of what they'd lost. A year after arriving in Sacramento, on the anniversary of their hurried courthouse wedding, they had a second ceremony. Small, intimate, attended by Margaret, Williams, and a few friends they'd made. Judge Winters traveled from Nevada to perform it, saying he wanted to see for himself how the story ended. Do you, Cole Mercer, take Leanne to be your wife? In truth this time, not convenience, but in the ways that matter most? I do. Do you, Leanne Mercer, take Cole to be your husband, building together, choosing each other, making it mean something? I do. Then by the power vested in me and the evidence of my own eyes, I pronounce you married. Again. Better this time. The small gathering laughed. Cole kissed Leanne, and it felt different from their first wedding, less desperate, more sure. They'd earned this ceremony through survival and stubbornness and the simple decision to keep choosing each other. The celebration was simple. Food Margaret cooked, wine Williams bought, stories and laughter that lasted into the night. Judge Winters pulled Cole aside at one point, looking satisfied. You did good, son. Both of you. Took something ugly and made it beautiful. We're still working on it, still figuring things out. That's life. Nobody gets it perfect. Winters squeezed his shoulder. But you're building something real. That's more than most people manage. As the evening wound down and guests departed, Cole and Leanne stood in their small house, surrounded by the life they'd made. It wasn't the life Cole had planned with Sarah, wasn't the life Leon had dreamed of in China, but it was theirs, built from fire and fear and the stubborn refusal to give up. What are you thinking about? Leon asked, seeing his far-off expression. How strange life is. How you showed up in my cabin with a knife and a demand, and I thought you were just trouble. Turns out you were the best thing that happened to me in 5 years. I'm still trouble. Yeah, but you're my trouble. That's different. She laughed, the sound filling their small house with warmth. What do we do now? We've built the life, survived the threats, made it work. What comes next? We keep living, keep building. Maybe have some kids if that's something you want. Grow old together and tell stories about how we met that our grandchildren won't believe. Kids. She said it thoughtfully, like testing the idea. I never let myself imagine that. Seemed impossible when I was property. You're not property. You're my partner, my wife, someone who fought her way to freedom and built something beautiful from the ashes. Cole pulled her close. And yeah, I think you'd be an amazing mother. When we're ready, no rush. They stood together in their house, their home, the place they'd made safe through determination and help from unexpected sources. Outside, Sacramento continued its restless growth, building and rebuilding itself like all frontier cities. Inside, two people who'd learned the hard way that survival wasn't enough were learning something better: how to thrive. William stopped by the next morning, looking nervous. I wanted to tell you before I left, he said. I'm headed north. Oregon, maybe Washington. Freight company's expanding and they need someone to scout routes. You're leaving? Leon said, clearly sad. For a while, but I'll be back. You two are the closest thing I've got to family. He shuffled his feet. I wanted to say thank you for letting me be part of this, for showing me that people can change, that bad things don't have to define you forever. Cole shook his hand. You saved us more than once. We're the ones who should be thanking you. We helped each other. That's what matters. Williams mounted his horse, looking down at them. Take care of each other. And if you ever need anything at all, you send word. I'll come. They watched him ride away, heading north toward new territory and new possibilities. Another person whose life had intersected with theirs, changed and been changed by the collision. He'll be all right, Leon said. Yeah, he's tougher than he looks. They went back inside, back to the ordinary work of living. Leon to her sewing, Cole to his construction plans. Normal work, normal days, the beautiful mundane routine of people who'd fought for the right to be ordinary. That evening, sitting on their small porch watching the sun set, Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, not the bright joy he'd known with Sarah, but something deeper and more sustainable. Peace, earned through struggle. Satisfaction that came from building something real with someone who understood the cost.
Cole?
Leon's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Yeah? When you imagined your future, back before Sarah died, before you went into the desert, what did you see? Same thing most people see, I guess. Family, home, growing old with someone I loved. Simple things. He smiled. I didn't make it with Sarah, but maybe I'm getting another chance with you. We're making it together. That's different from what you had before. Not better or worse, just different. Good different. Yeah, good different. The sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would be gone in minutes. But there'd be another sunset tomorrow and another the day after. An endless string of ordinary days adding up to a life worth living. They'd started as strangers bound by desperation. They'd become partners through necessity. They were becoming something deeper now. Two people who'd seen the worst in each other and the world, and chose to build toward better anyway. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still hard days ahead. Prejudice Leon would face, trauma they'd both carry, the normal struggles of making a life work. But they'd face those things together with the stubborn determination that had gotten them this far. Cole reached over, took Leon's hand. She squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was everything they'd built and everything they'd become. Two survivors who'd found each other in the desert and decided that survival wasn't enough. Who'd fought their way to freedom and were learning day by day how to turn that freedom into something beautiful. The night settled in around them, warm and full of promise. Tomorrow they'd wake up and go to work, and the day after that, and the day after that. Building their life one ordinary day at a time, one honest choice at a time, one moment of choosing each other at a time. It was enough, more than enough. It was home.